Okay. I now call to order the July 11th, 2023 regular meeting of the Town of Wellington Board of Trustees, the time being 6:31 PM. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Here.
trustee Daly,
Present.
trustee Mason,
Here.
trustee Teets,
Here.
trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Here.
Mayor Shosse.
Okay. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Excellent. Are there any conflicts of interest related to any items on the agenda this evening? Excellent. Community participation. Now is the time for public comment on any non-agenda items. Please know that if any person desires to make a statement regarding the proposed asphalt plant, that this board cannot consider your comments at this time. There is an ongoing appeal of that decision, which will require the Board of Trustees to act in a quasi judicial role. To ensure that all parties' due process rights are protected, we will not permit any public comment related to Planning Commission meetings on this topic or the decision at this time. There is a set process and we need to abide by the law when time comes for considering the appeal. We cannot take comments on the topic into account, so please help us get through this meeting without issue. We will now move on. Individuals wishing to speak on any non-agenda items are asked to sign up on the form provided at the podium. When at the podium, please state your name for the record and you will be limited to 3 minutes during public comment. Okay. Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda for this evening, which includes the June 13th, 2023 Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
A second.
May I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Daly,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
No. Next on the agenda are the action items. The first item is resolution for the Wellington Senior Resource Center annual contract renewal. Ms. Jenny Jones, Public Works Program Administrator, and Ms. Dorothy McClure, who serves as the Director for the Wellington Senior Center.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Mayor Pro Tem. My name is Jenny Jones, and I currently serve as the Town Staff Liaison for the Wellington Senior Resource Center. Tonight, we have our annual contract renewal, very similar in standard to previous years. This renewal provides all funding in regards to their vehicles that they maintain, which we actually transitioned to one vehicle. So that's reflected in Exhibit A with the funding. We're just going to be requesting insurance maintenance for the 2021 Starcraft van that they currently have. Currently, we do have a slight increase in our insurance cost, as you can kind of see from Exhibit A to Exhibit B. Sadly, premiums as a whole have increased, so that's part of it, as well as the demand for driver availability to get to critical medical appointments. We've hired an additional driver. So to cover those two drivers fully, we do have an increase with that as well. And before I turn it over to Dorothy, typically this past year, my kind of focus with the seniors was to really work on communication, community outreach, creating brochures, which I did create our new brochure and include that in the packet for you guys. And just really kind of create the awareness of our offerings. There's still a lot of seniors that are in need. that currently just don't even know that the senior center exists. So that was really a big focus, as well as just kind of promotion for events such as their annual fundraiser for the pancake breakfast. For the upcoming year, I would like to kind of focus on the funding piece. We may have a few challenges with Larimer County Office of Aging funding, as well as creating a vehicle use policy with the senior board, just to clarify kind of appropriate use and what Larimer County will actually allow the seniors to use the bus for. They are pretty strict, and we didn't know the extent of it. So we really just want to be transparent and clarify those uses. And that way we know if it's a reasonable ask. And I'll let Dorothy go ahead and speak a little bit about the current programming.
The center would like to thank the town of Wellington for your past support and ask that you continue your support of letting the seniors use the Leaper Center and maintaining our 15-passenger bus. The Wellington Senior Center is open and staffed by volunteers Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from about 8:30 till about 1. Membership totals currently are 101 members, 13 of which are new members this year. So we are growing. We hold 2 yearly fundraisers, one in the spring, our pancake breakfast in connection with the townwide yard sale, and another one in December with a lunch and outside vendors in the senior center selling. And it's been a very profitable fundraiser for us. In the past year, the center has implemented 3 new programs. One is our Friday lunch offering for $5. The center prepares a complete meal every Friday. Meal attendance averages about 22 seniors each time. And the cost is $5, which pays for the food for the next Friday meal. And it's been very popular. The seniors are really enjoying it. It's when you live alone, it's kind of nice to be able to get together with friends to share a meal. Another one of our new things is the Sit and Be Fit exercise class. The center received a donation of a huge used TV, and we had a DVD player and exercise tapes. So we started the Sit and Be Fit exercise program Monday and Friday mornings at 8:30, and they run about a half hour. We've had between 6 and 11 seniors for each of those sessions. We also offer senior haircuts now every 8 weeks, and the cost is $20, which is really reasonable considering what haircuts cost now. The continuing senior activities are Wednesdays. We have a 5-star band that we've had for probably 17 years now, providing music for us every Wednesday with country, Western, and gospel music. We host a potluck 1 Wednesday a month. The second Wednesday of the month, the sheriff's department, fire department, and/or the town administrators meet with the seniors for an informative presentation and a question and answer session. We celebrate all members' birthdays on the second Wednesday of that month with cake and singing. We schedule several outings a month to surrounding area restaurants and tours of interesting places. For so far, 366 seniors have taken advantage of these outings. We have opportunities to play games, including cribbage, bingo, dominoes, and cards on Mondays and Fridays. Our members have served the community by helping with the recent fishing and bike safety derbies, helping at the local food bank, hosting a chamber meeting, and participating in the Christmas parade. The senior center bus is used to transport local seniors to and from medical-related appointments within a 15-mile radius on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. 1,248 rides so far this year for 18 riders. It also brings members who can't transport themselves to the senior center for meals and social events. It also provides group transportation for the senior outings twice a month on Tuesdays and Thursdays. In closing, we want to thank you for your past support of the Senior Center and hope that you see fit to continue supporting us in the future. The Wellington Senior Center provides vital support and connections for area seniors by providing a gathering place to share with friends, a welcoming place to obtain useful information regarding senior issues, stimulating fun and educational outings, as well as vital medical-related transportation. Thank you for your time and consideration. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Ms. Jones and Ms. McClure. I was going to originally ask about the increased insurance premium for the All-Star van, but I did actually take the liberty of pulling my own quote for the All-Star van, and it actually happened to be right in line with what you guys have here in Exhibit A. So I'm good with that.
I was gonna ask the same question. You answered it, which was perfect. was
I
like, I'm sure there's an
suspected there
answer,
might
so,
be some
You were
questions,
great.
so.
The only other question I have, you guys are doing great work with the seniors. Can we maybe make a note to try and get this back before the board before the contract expires in future years?
So we were originally scheduled, it got bumped a little bit because
Okay.
we had the, people out of town and
Gotcha.
such.
Okay.
So we
Okay.
did traditionally, we do like
Okay.
to get it
Works.
just so we do stay in line with the county. This was
We
just kind of,
tried.
Okay.
yeah, we did for sure.
That was it.
So
I think it's great. You guys are doing great work and I'd like to see you continue it.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank you guys for your contribution to the town. I am lucky enough to attend some of your fundraisers, which is always a great time, even though it was pouring rain, I think,
Mhm.
that one day. But
Great turnout, even with the rain.
I was surprised. I thought people wouldn't show up, but
Yeah.
I was there and then it was wonderful. All the tents were fantastic. Great company always, and what a great group. So thank you so much for your support for our community. It's definitely a needed service for sure. So hoping we can support these kind of efforts in the future even more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing. The seniors have so much to give and to give back. And I'd love to see you guys work and see what more you can give to our community, but I know you're doing a great job right now. There's so much talent there, so we need to utilize that as much as any. And it makes them feel worthwhile too. So
Well,
Thank
if you ever have any ideas that we can help with, or, more things that we can do for the community, feel free to bring them up. Always open to suggestions.
Trustee Teets?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for everything that Dorothy does for the community and the town staff that works alongside them to make sure our seniors are well cared for here in our community. I also have got to attend a lot of their events and look forward to their Christmas event every year when they get ready to do all of the vendors. So I'm very grateful to everything they do for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Are there any comments from the public on this item? Okay. That being said, may I have a motion on this item, please?
I move that we approve resolution number 22, 2023 Wellington Senior Resource Center Annual Contract Renewal.
Second.
Okay, are there any final comments from the Board of Trustees regarding this agenda item? Thank you so much to the senior center and the staff for making sure that we continue to have this programming for our seniors. They're a very important part of the community, and helping create community is part of what the senior center brings to Wellington. So thank you so much. With that, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator?
Yes.
Trustee Daly?
Yes.
Trustee Mason?
Yes.
Trustee Teets?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald?
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All righty. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the proposed rezone of Saddleback subdivision from R2 residential low density to R3 residential medium density and preliminary plat of Saddleback subdivision first replat. A separate action item to consider a town ordinance will immediately follow and will include Board of Trustee deliberation on the rezoning of Saddleback subdivision. Members of the public will have the opportunity to provide comment during the public hearing only. Okay, I'll finish this and then I'll take a question. Individuals wishing to speak during the public hearing are asked to sign up on the form provided at the podium. When at the podium, please state your name and address for the record, and you'll be limited to 3 minutes during the public comment. This item will be presented by the town's planning director, Cody Bird. And we have a question from a trustee,
Trustee Teets.
trustee Teets.
Yes, I am going to remove myself for this section of the meeting since this is going to a public hearing. Mr. Sapienza, can you clarify that this is a quasi judicial?
Thank you, trustee Teets. Yes, this public hearing in the ordinance is a quasi judicial hearing, and it's been the past practice of this board that remote participation in board meetings is allowed for legislative and other items, but not for quasi judicial meetings. The reason for that is to make sure that every member of the board is receiving the same information. So it's to protect the due process rights of the applicants.
Ms. Garcia, will you please send me a text message when the hearing is over?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bird, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Cody Bird, Planning Director for the town. And I'm getting presentation slides up here. There we go. So as was introduced, I'm going to be in front of you for a little while tonight for a couple items. The first two items are related to a public hearing for a rezone and a replat. The second item in that series is an actual ordinance that we'll present in just a moment. I also want to take a moment and explain that the items before you for public hearing are for both a rezone and a replat, and they're both being presented to you simultaneously to demonstrate that the two are integrally tied. It's not uncommon for a developer to request a rezoning and then later come in and submit plats or replats to achieve the intent that they had for the zoning. And in this case, we'd ask the developer to present those simultaneously so you can see the relationship between what's proposed for the development and the reason why the rezoning is requested. And so to that end, staff has been considering these two applications integrally tied and inseparable. So there's the delay. On your map or on the screen here are a couple of maps. The proposed rezone and replat are for a subdivision known as Saddleback subdivision. This subdivision was platted in 2018. And as we had presented to the trustees in a work session a couple of weeks ago, between 2018 when that original approval was granted and today, the town has undergone a comprehensive master plan, a zoning and land use code update, a water efficiency master plan, multiple other infrastructure master plans, and we've updated water rates and raw water dedication requirements. A lot has changed in those couple of years. And during that time period, we also slowed down the rate of growth and the new residential permits that could be issued to make sure that the town stayed within our treatment capacities for both our water plant and our wastewater treatment plant. And this subdivision was one that during that time period was asked to not move forward to make sure that we did not exceed our treatment capacity for permit issuance. And so now we're looking at things a little differently with all that new information for our infrastructure master plans and our water rates and our water resources. And when we looked at this subdivision, it's developed with large lots that are on average about 11,000 square feet per lot. And there's no well on the site, so they would be relying on town treated water for outdoor irrigation. That caused town staff to ask the developer, maybe we should look at this a little differently than we did back in 2018. Let's look at something different. The developer took that to heart, and what they are proposing to do is to replat the property from the 153 lots that are currently platted and approved, and make those lots a little narrower and shorten the depth of those lots, so decrease the size. And the purpose behind that is primarily to make better use of the town's water resources. The combination of narrowing the lots and decreasing the lot depth will make those lots much smaller and with the same house footprint and the same driveway footprint that would be non-irrigable area, it reduces the overall irrigation demand for the subdivision. So to accomplish that, the developer was looking at 54-foot wide lots, which is not allowed under the existing R2 zoning. So that is the reason for the rezone request. The R3 zoning that is being requested does allow for the lot size and dimensions that the developer is seeking to accomplish the replat for those smaller lot sizes. We have several findings for approval in a rezone and a replat, and we'll go over those in just a moment. But one of them is conformance with the comprehensive plan. And that was part that I wanted to, well, I'm probably just described all this. But here it is in the text. But the reason why we wanted to mention the comprehensive plan now is that the future land use map in the comp plan identifies this area as low density residential. And at the time that the comprehensive plan was being developed and going through public hearing process, low density residential was intended for single family detached and single family attached lots with up to 6 dwelling units per acre. That was the recommendation for the low density consideration. When we got into the land use code and began writing the details of our zoning and the lot sizes and the density requirements, the philosophy shifted a little bit and some of the districts changed. So our low density district is a little bit lower than the medium density district, but the overall density of this proposed development with the replat that's proposed would be about 3.72 dwelling units per acre, which is within both the zoning and the intent of the comprehensive plan for the low density at 6 dwelling units per acre. So the names are a little bit different, but the overall intent was relatively the same for that single family detached, less than 6 dwelling units per acre. And I'm just one slide behind each time because that's exactly what my next slide is. My apologies, but this is a snapshot of the comprehensive plan that shows that low density residential intent and the future land use map. So I want to circle back to the findings for approval, and I have both the rezone on here and the preliminary plat. I also don't want to read those slides to you, and I won't do that. They're in your staff report, staff's analysis, and as well as the analysis that the Planning Commission looked at in reviewing these is all in your staff report. But I wanted to highlight that those are in here, and we can use these slides as a tool if you'd like to in your deliberations when we get to that point. But at this point, I wanted to take a break and invite the developer or their agent up to share a few things if they would like to about their project and their proposed development here. And right after the applicant gets up to share a few words, I'll also go over our public hearing procedures. This was intended to be the introduction. I'll go over your public hearing procedures and we'll go on to next steps. So at this point, I would like to invite Mr. Mark Geffro, representing Sage Homes, the developer.
Good evening, board. I'm going to kind of paraphrase a lot of stuff Cody said, but as he said, this is a Board of Trustees approved the Saddleback subdivision plat in 2018, consisting of 153 lots.
I'm sorry, would you mind moving the microphone? You can move
Yep.
this, adjust. There you go.
153 lots. Lots ranged in size from 8,500 square feet to over 18,000 square feet. Average lot size, as Cody said, approximately 11,000 square feet. Does not have a non-potable water source for irrigation, so all required landscape irrigation planned to be from the Wellington's treated water system. The property is currently zoned R2 residential low density for single family residences. The proposal to rezone to R3 residential medium density would allow 58 additional lots. And the average lot size would be approximately 6,500 square feet. The proposed change to R3 zoning and the replat of the property will enable smaller lot sizes, increase the area of native vegetation, and there'll be an overall reduction of water demand for outdoor irrigation of the property. This will benefit the town's water infrastructural systems, and the reduced lot size will allow for a more efficient use of the town's water resources. So that's what we're trying to do as the developer, take advantage of the, water's looked at a lot different now than it was in 2018. So Cody will get into a lot more details now.
And while Mr. Geffro was presenting, I brought up the display boards. The proposed one is in your agenda packet, and I thought it'd be helpful to have these here for visual representation tonight also. We have the original that's currently existing, and then the proposed. And then at some point here, I'd also like to, once the board has had an opportunity to view those, I'd like to turn them around. When we had the planning commission meeting, we received some feedback afterwards that while it was great to have the boards here, the audience couldn't see them. So I want to make sure we give that opportunity here. Do any of the board members wish to have these here a little bit longer? So this is the currently existing layout. And this is the proposed. So as we've kind of gone through this, I wanted to recap after our introductions, recap your public hearing process. First of all, we'll do disclosure of any ex parte communications, if any. And we'll also do any conflicts of interest. I know you do this at the beginning of the meeting. We'll ask for it again as part of the public hearing process. You've received staff introductions. I will go through and give you staff's assessment and recommendations as well. And then if the applicant has anything more to say, they can have that opportunity, but then we'll move into public comments. We'll open the floor for residents to speak. Following the close of the public comments, we will go back to the developer, the applicant, to respond to any of the questions or comments from the public. Staff will have an opportunity to respond as well. And then the board can ask any questions and do your deliberations. Excuse me. And again, we do have other staff here as well. If you have questions specific to water, traffic, and I can address most of those questions. If we have any other detailed questions, I might call on others to help answer those as well. So here are the findings for approval for both the rezone and the preliminary plat. I promised I wouldn't read them, but they're here for reference if we need to go back to them. So for staff's assessment, as we mentioned, the property is currently zoned R2 and the developer is requesting R3. That proposal is requested to add 58 additional lots and change the lot size from an average of 11,000 square feet to 6,500 square feet. The reduction in lot size will make for more efficient use of the town's water resources by reducing the amount of irrigation area for town treated water. It would also increase the, by reducing the depth of the lots around the perimeter of the subdivision, it would also allows the common area and open spaces to increase in size, and those areas are native vegetation, which would also require less water than irrigating a bluegrass lawn. That increases about 4.5 acres for the open space areas. Towns followed the rezone procedures. We've advertised public hearings in the newspaper, posted a sign on site, and sent letters to the adjacent property owners within 500 feet of the property. We've done that for both the rezone and the preliminary plat, so both are ripe for the board to consider in this public hearing. A quick comment that during the review of the preliminary plat, there were some comments that need to be addressed by the applicant as kind of cleanup items, and we expect that there could be a few more. It's not uncommon for minor changes to occur between preliminary and final plat to address staff comments. So we wanted to note that there may be a few minor things that need to be corrected. And for the summary and recommendations, staff did find that the approvals for both the rezone and the replat have been satisfied. We recommend the R3 zoning, and we recommend that that is integrally tied and concurrent with the replat. So in this particular case, if the rezoning is approved and the preliminary plat is approved, the applicant would then be able to proceed on to the final plat. And at the final plat stage, the final plat document gets cleaned up, finalized for signatures. We also would be looking at development agreement updates or an amendment to the existing development agreement to include any new considerations that need to be adjusted to reflect the new development proposal. And we bring that, I'm sorry, tonight I'm having trouble with my voice. We would bring those back, once the applicant submits the final, we will review that and bring those back for final recommendations. The final plat is also a public hearing, so we would do this process again. The Planning Commission has weighed in on both the rezone and the preliminary plat. They heard this at their June 12th meeting, and the Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of both the rezone and the preliminary plat. We subsequently took the layout and the park and trail plan to the Prost board to take a look at that and weigh in as well. The Prost was favorable for the reconfiguration of the park areas. If you recall from the original approval and the new proposal, the community or the pocket park, excuse me, was originally kind of tucked behind some houses behind the back fences, and it had a public sidewalk to access it, but it wasn't very visible. And with an opportunity to replat this, staff asked the developer to pull that forward, make it more visible, centrally focused for the neighborhood, and change the amenities, change the sidewalks to make that a little, make more sense, be more accessible. And the Prost board was really supportive of that particular change for the park and trail layout. And let's see. So based on the Planning Commission's recommendation and the Prost recommendation, staff also recommends approval of the rezoning and the preliminary plat, and we support that in the context of the staff reports. So approval of these items would allow the applicant to proceed on to final plat. That's the conclusion of my presentation. Well, actually, you know what? That's the end of this slideshow. I would also like to go back over to the water question because there was some information that was presented and I included in the packet. I want to share that as well. So this is a presentation slide deck that the applicant had presented to the board in a work session a few weeks ago. And really the part that I really wanted to focus on was this slide here. What you see on the left is the existing platted lots that's platted under the approved subdivision plat today. The one on the far left is a little bit bigger. Those are for kind of the exterior, or the lots around the outside perimeter of the subdivision, and they have a little bit larger size to them because they back up to that open space. And then the 75 by 115 foot lot is more typical of the lots that are interior to the existing subdivision plat. But both of those are 11,000 and 8,500 or 8,600 square feet respectively, on average for a typical lot. What this graphic is representing is the same building footprint and driveway footprint on each of these four pictures. And it's to highlight the difference between changing the lot size with the relationship of the irrigable area to the non-irrigable area or the rooftops and driveways. So you can see on the far right, the proposed layout with the new lot dimensions significantly reduces the irrigable area for these lots, which would reduce the amount of irrigation water on a per lot basis for using town treated water for outdoor use. That would have to be multiplied across the whole subdivision to calculate the total water demand, and staff is still working with the developer to evaluate the water components for the outdoor irrigation. Wanted to highlight that since that was kind of the basic premise for why we were looking at a different way of accomplishing this subdivision. I want to highlight a little bit of the details on that. So for the indoor water use, the town's raw water requirements are separated into indoor use and outdoor use. They're currently both at a 1/4 acre foot per house for indoor and a 1/4 acre foot per house for outdoor, if they're using town treated water for outdoor use. Because those are separated, the indoor use is going to stay the same. Every lot within a subdivision would have to satisfy the interior or the indoor raw water demand requirement. For the exterior, for the outdoor irrigation water, based on the town's methodology and calculations that we use to set the raw water contribution requirements, the developer has been asked to demonstrate using the same methodology, using all the same variables, so we can compare apples to apples, looking at average lot sizes, which is what these images are intended to depict. We can then calculate what the expected outdoor water demand for this particular development proposal would be in comparison to what the town's normal raw water requirement for outdoor use is. It's a process that we've asked the developer to develop a pretty detailed water analysis to accomplish that, and we're still working with the developer to review those numbers, and we'll have those for the board's consideration when we come back with a final plat. That would be the time when the board would be looking at a development agreement and would be making actual decisions on what those numbers mean and what the board's willing to agree to, if anything. So I wanted to highlight a little bit of that information. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. The full detailed analysis is still underway, but we'll bring that back and be able to present very specific information in a future date. So now I'm going to give my voice a rest here, but I'll be happy to respond to any questions. And as a reminder, you'll open up for public comment here in just a moment, and then we can address any further questions.
I'll just make sure that I follow the script, and just to note, I'll do the proclamation at the very end of the agenda. I apologize for missing that. Sorry. So just to make sure that I'm following along here properly, fellow board members, are there any conflicts of interest on this agenda item that we would like to disclose? Any ex parte communication on this agenda item?
I did want to disclose, I had discussed with about 4 different residents, just some really more clarifying pieces of information regarding this proposal. I don't think it's anything that the board didn't already know, so.
Any concerns from legal counsel? Excellent. Anything else, Board of Trustees? Fantastic. Mr. Byrd, please entertain questions from the board.
Do you want our questions now or after the public hearing, if it's in details?
I'm happy to do both.
Okay.
If there are questions that are kind of clarification or would help the audience and the public commenters on their understanding, I'd be happy to answer those now. If they're questions that are more analytical and deliberative, I can answer those after the public comments.
I'll share with you the question. You can let me know which it is.
Okay.
So I appreciate they're working on the detailed and the water and everything like that. But I know one of the things that's been brought up is that we're looking at an overall reduction in water demand. But we're reducing size of yards, but we're also increasing number of homes plus number of houses. So I'm just trying to figure out how we're arriving, if we're still doing the study, how we've arrived at it is going to be less. Because yes, we're reducing irrigational size on a single lot, but then we're adding, I think, 60 or 70 lots to the total 58. I'm sorry. Thank you. 58 lots. So I'm trying to understand how we're getting to, it's more efficient use. We're using less water, but we're still doing the study. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that would fall in.
Sure. I think that's a great question, and I'd be happy to answer it now. That way the audience can hear it as well. I'll preface this by going back to indoor is indoor.
Sure.
And that's not part of the consideration. That for us staff, we're looking at that has to be a 1-for-1. The premise there is, or the suggestion would be that our town treated water supply is best used for drinking water, potable sources for indoor use for any of our residents, and not as good of a use for irrigation purposes. Had this subdivision been proposed now as a blank slate, we might not have even annexed or developed this property without a well and outdoor irrigation. So it's a little bit of a unique situation. But such as it is, with the outdoor irrigation being a less efficient use of the town treated water supply and putting a bigger burden on the systems and the demand for water and our treatment abilities, we acknowledge the indoor demand is going to increase. That's going to increase wherever we build houses in town. So for the way staff is looking at it is that's kind of an isolated component of the, yes, the overall water demand for the whole subdivision could be going up as a result of the additional indoor demand, but that's where we're supposed to provide our town treated water is for indoor uses. So the outdoor piece is really the focus of that. And so for the reasons we'd kind of explained, if the reduction in the outdoor irrigation demand is accomplished, that's really the benefit to the town. Did that help answer the question?
Yes, that did, because that's where I kept, I was like, wait, you're gonna have more. But
Yes.
that makes sense. You're just looking at, we would build these homes regardless. We just might build them somewhere else. And I thank you. That helps me to see where you're coming from.
Yes, thank you for the question. Any other questions I can answer now?
Yeah, I got a question, and I know I asked it, I think the last time. In here somewhere, I saw that we did a traffic study over there.
Mhm.
And how's another 58 residents going to affect it? I know I live on that side of town, and it's a horror show at times, trying to get in and out. So can you explain or kind of give us an update what the city has for that?
Yeah, so, and I'll pull up those exact numbers for the counts because I don't have them memorized. But when the subdivision was originally approved in 2018, a traffic impact study was required at that time. It evaluated the 153 lots that are currently platted. When the density is changing and replatting it, we required an update to that original TIS. The developer hired a transportation engineering company to evaluate that. Staff reviewed the results, and we also hired a third-party independent contractor to review it simultaneously with town staff. The results of that process, the updated TIS or traffic impact study is expected that the change or the delta, the 58 additional lots would generate approximately 530 more daily trips. And that would be 31 in the morning peak hour and 45 in the PM peak hour. So those are the net numbers. That doesn't always mean a whole lot to everyone who doesn't read these 100-page documents for fun, but 530 more total daily trips above what's already approved, and 45 afternoon peak hour trips is the expected result of that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off because I know you're gonna say something. I think it's also worthy of pointing out that the original TIS had recommended some turn lane improvements, and those were accomplished or are part of the approval for the existing subdivision. And so the new TIS or the updated TIS didn't recommend any additional changes to road configurations, turn lanes, or layouts. We recognize that the interchange is an existing condition, an existing problem, no doubt, and that's high on staff's mind, as I know it is on the board members as well. But a single subdivision for 211 lots would not be able to accomplish a fix of that magnitude by itself. It's going to require a bigger effort to address that existing condition.
Do we have anything in the plans? I know right now we have a problem over there, and this is going to compound it. So do we have any future plans on how we're going to accomplish it?
For the interchange specifically, yeah. So the town is definitely working with CDOT to help them understand why that's such a big concern for the town. And CDOT is the primary and the lead party responsible for the interstate highway and the accesses to the interstate highway. So the town can't just say, here's our proposal, now we're going to go get it done. We have to work with CDOT to accomplish those things. And an interchange on an interstate highway is a pretty significant project that will require significant design and significant funding. So we're working with CDOT to pursue those avenues to make that a reality. But I admit, I think it's a long time off.
Long time.
CDOT doesn't even have it on their project list right now. It's not their highest priority. So we're trying to help them understand why it should be made a higher priority.
Okay. Last question. Everything over there is single family detached from what I saw on the plan, no multifamily
Correct. For this proposal?
for this proposal?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, I could flip these back around too, if it would help. But the existing platted lot is all single family detached, and the proposed changes would remain single family detached. The plat is the piece that really kind of locks that down. If the board approves the changes, and when a board approves a final plat and development agreement, that is the plan that they have to follow unless they come back and get other approvals. So it's a legal document that locks down that this is the lot arrangement that you can develop.
Okay. Just one quick statement here. It looks like we are looking at what, 6,210 square feet on the lot size?
I think that's an average. number.
Right, I think that was it. The addition that I came from in Fort Collins, West Chase, I was looking at my lot size was 5,800 square feet. Big homes over there and pretty decent addition. So it's kind of uncommon out here, but it's pretty common in metro areas, I believe, that lot size.
Yeah.
So.
Expect. I don't want to comment. I could, but I think it was a good statement. I don't want to overstep.
Okay, let me just cut you off then.
Perfect.
Great, all right. We will now open the public hearing on amendments to the official zoning map of the town. No, did I skip it? Okay, all right. And the time is now 7:17 PM.
Public comment?
You're up.
All right. Okay, Dawn Peacock. And I have no horse in this race. So I just had some notes from not only this presentation, but the one before. First of all, I wanted to say that I hope nobody is vilifying the builder because the town requested this. And so the builder was just kind of following the town's lead. And I believe from the previous presentation that there was a statement that the builder is actually picking up some costs to fix some previous developer items that weren't completed, which is fabulous. You know, the builder that's being worked into this. With respect to what Trustee Gator had said before with the indoor and outdoor water use. So it looks like with the extra houses, there'll be about 14.5 acre feet of water, which is a more efficient use of water. But I was just wondering if there was any consideration to, and again, no horse in this race, so it doesn't matter to me, but leaving it the way it was and having more stringent HOA requirements as to how the landscaping could be done. I know that there are a lot of instances where you can perhaps demand like, you know, a certain percentage of your lawn, because I know in my homeowners association, everything's demanded, but you know, like of natural type of plants and stuff that are common to the area that are less drought, you know, more drought resistant and all that. So I was just wondering if that had ever even been considered in rather than adding all the additional houses. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
My name's Elizabeth Opole, and I was here at the last board meeting, and I don't like talking in public, so I'm sorry. I'm going to be nervous, but yeah, is that better? Okay. So we attended the initial planning meeting, and it was apparent that town staff was in favor of this rezone request. And they've already started moving dirt over there. So that was confusing to me because I thought that residents' opinions would be heard before a decision would be made, but they've been having big dirt trucks over there moving stuff already. So I don't know if this is a fruitless effort to even talk, but I hope that you'll consider the negative impact of this decision and consider a better solution. I think a better solution for residents within the community would be to allow for a replat rather than jumping to a complete rezone. This area is not intended for medium density housing, and adding another over 200 homes to the area would be irresponsible. Obviously, the housing market has shifted from 2018. Interest rates are high. Having smaller lots and less expensive homes to sell would be a great financial benefit to the builders. But this decision shouldn't be made to the detriment of current homeowners and residents. This isn't just about less grass to water. It's about significantly increasing density and rezoning an entire subdivision that was intended for R2 use. Just because the builder says they plan on maintaining single family homes doesn't mean this will not have a negative impact on current residents. A rezone is not supposed to relieve particular hardships, as the land use code says. The builder could accomplish smaller lot sizes without a rezone being granted. Minimum lot size for R2 is currently 6,600 square feet, a marked decrease from their current plat. Negative impacts, water consumption, which I'm not an expert. They have all these studies, whatever, but it's more water. Increased sewage, increased traffic where there's already significant problems. Busing's already an issue for kids and you're increasing that by a lot. There's problems with the pedestrian travel. The underpass is regularly flooded. I see kids crossing the freeway. I've seen kids going over the bridge in the middle of the frontage road. And emergency services are a problem. We have nothing over there on that side. Fort Collins Fort Collins Fire got to that fire on Sumner before Wellington, I heard. So, anyways, I think it's a bad decision. I don't think you should rush into it. And I think you should consider what us as residents feel about it, not just the builder and town staff. Thanks.
Please hold your applause. Thank you. Okay, any additional public comment?
All right, can y'all hear me good? All right, my name is Wes Sanford. I live. So I own the property completely on this side. So they're gonna be butting up right now. Now, I did know this property was gonna be built before we bought the property. It's gonna do nothing but benefit me. I'm in Larimer County. So Wellington water doesn't really affect me. I've come to love Wellington and the people in it. I know a lot of people here and you're good people. The problem is I'm in building. It's not realistic. 70% of your water usage is in the interior of your house. That's at the end. I'm in building, so I know the scapegoat of like, okay, we can sprinkle the yard or water the yard less and save money. That's not realistic. That's 3 months out of the year. The math is not gonna add up. On top of it, sorry, I'm a little nervous and wound up myself too, and I'm usually very outspoken. I'm not saying anything bad about Cody, but we shouldn't even be coming to this decision if we don't have all the information up. And Cody's already admitted multiple times, we don't have all the information. It's irresponsible. I do a lot of work with the city of Fort Collins. I work with the DDA, the public defenders. I deal with all this stuff all the time. It's irresponsible. And the amount of water usage that y'all are gonna take in from adding 57 more houses or 58 more houses, it's crazy. Like, this shouldn't even be a debate. This should be like, duh. I mean, I guess that's really all I have to say. We already know the infrastructure is just a hot mess here. I mean, all you gotta do is walk outside and see. I live, you live on that side, you get it. So I'm just hoping, I know a lot of y'all, I know you're smart. And I just hope I see that today, because I think that I would love the subdivision. It makes my property worth more. And I'm NOCO water, so I literally pay less in water and I feed 38 horses. Y'all pay more than I do. It's crazy. And it's out of control. So I hope the best for y'all. I hope that y'all make the right decision. You gotta do what you gotta do though. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Excellent. Hearing no further comment. Whoop. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Carlos Centeno. I'm directly in front of West Sanford. The last 3 or 4 years, we've noticed the traffic. People are not coming through the highway anymore. They're coming around and they're just destroying the road in front of us. I mean, potholes this year were huge to where we can only go 5-10 miles an hour to get home now. By, adding that subdivision, or it's gonna be done anyway, they should at least, if they do, at least go to the Fox and Overlook and put a road. So it doesn't, we don't have to come home and have all those people. We have a ton of traffic, people jogging all day, which is great, but the cars there, it's massive. And the guy across the street from me, next to Wes, another thing, I don't understand where the water's gonna go, what they're doing with the water. I don't understand that, but his lot today is still about 1.5 to 2 feet underwater because of all the rain. So where's this subdivision's rainwater gonna go? I mean, that's a big issue. You can go to the day, there's still water in the guy's lot. So, I mean, when I heard about this, I was like, we bought out there to get out of town. I own another house here in town and it's a great place to live. And, just getting off on the exit here, it's huge, sometimes 15 minutes, all the way to the sign, trying to get off the I-25. I'm getting off sometimes on Mulberry now, driving all the frontage road just to get home. Because now even the Budweiser exit's real bad. So, thought I'd see my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a friendly reminder for anybody that's providing public comment at the hearing this evening, please be sure and sign in as well, either at the podium or I believe that we have a sign-in sheet there at the back. So if you provided public comment, be sure and fill that out on your way out this evening.
Hey, my name is Ben Stewart. I'm a new resident to the Meadows HOA. I don't know all the different subdivisions and everything, but we just moved in December. I'm very happy to be there, but I guess I just had a couple questions that you all would consider for the board. One thing that was brought up by Cody, sorry, I don't remember your last name. Was that if this was proposed today, it may not have been passed without a well that was addition. Now, maybe we can't make that decision. But I think that we should be able to leverage that or ask the builder to leverage some of their power to propose a well to the town. And hopefully the same can be done. I know it's not even on the Colorado DOT's radar, but to hopefully have some kind of leverage again, because they're in that financial position to hopefully improve some of that traffic. Because taking my kids to school over there and they get to go to Rice is pretty chaotic in the mornings. And one time we did actually time out the light at about 9-10 p.m. at night during a weekday. And we waited at 10 minutes just to turn left to get over the overpass. So I remember thinking that was pretty crazy. So I was not an exaggeration. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Long, awkward pause. Any more public comment? Okay.
My name's Cassie Sanford. I also live with Wes. We own and run Stable Foundations, which is a boarding facility, and we live there as well. I wanted to just reiterate what Carlos had been talking about the fact that a lot of this ground is actually still under floodplains and it remains underwater large portions of the year. That property is this property that's already been approved also is in that area. And so the idea of the water, where it's going to go and infrastructure for that, I haven't heard any plans for that. And I would hope that they'd have plans for the water before approving plans to go forward. I'm not sure what has happened over there, but they are hauling large amounts of dirt. I mean, the road is actually kind of a hazard right now because probably 2 trucks every 5 minutes. I mean, it's a back-to-back trucks loading in and out. They're taking dirt, so they're lowering the ground now. So I'm just curious what thoughts on the floodplaining it is, because my property is higher than all of this land. And the only parts of my property that are outside of the flood are my houses. So I would like to know more about that. So I guess I don't really know what more to add, but the idea that watering grass is the reason why we're increasing the properties, it just is mind blowing to me because the households are inevitably going to use more than watering some grass. And I love the suggestion about some zero landscaping, things that don't necessarily require a lot of water. I do hope that the board can consider the vast number, I mean, the schools alone too. I mean, yes, we have the Wellington Middle High School, the old one that's now going to become another, leg of the elementary school, but this is also going to tax the schools further. And where are the plans for all of that? So anyways, thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Okay. Hearing no further comments, I now close the hearing on amendments to the official zoning map of the town, the time being 7:32 PM. Next, the board will deliberate on item D3. This item will not include an opportunity for public comment. The next item on our agenda will be board deliberation on an ordinance rezoning a portion of the Saddleback subdivision from R2 residential low density to R3 residential medium density. Mr. Byrd will also present this item to the board. Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Traditionally, after a public hearing, there's an opportunity for the applicant to respond to comments and staff to respond to comments as well. I think that could be accomplished here if that were the will of the board. If you wanted to hear those responses, or if you just wanted to hear or begin your deliberations on the ordinance.
I think that makes sense, and then we can open it up to the board for additional questions after that, if that works for my fellow trustees.
And I may have a couple questions as well before deliberation.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to answer or respond?
Yeah, Mr. Gifro. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
As far as moving the dirt, we haven't started anything in that neighborhood. We had Northern Colorado Engineering do a study. We're short dirt. We're on the last phase of Sage Meadows that we're working on now. So we're actually taking dirt from that area and using it over there. So as far as, we haven't started moving dirt or anything for that particular neighborhood. That makes sense. The floodplain, we're working on that still. It's a work in progress, same company. A little bit over my head as far as that, but we hope to have results on that, relatively soon. Worst case scenario, if it is too low, it'll be so the floodplain is kind of down in here. We'll either have to eliminate all those lots, or else they'll have to be built on crawl spaces. And that's kind of what options we're looking at now. I believe that was it. Any more questions?
Does the Board of Trustees have any questions for the applicant?
This is kind of combined for you and Mr. Byrd, but there was a couple comments of outstanding items that aren't available for the current hearing and for our ordinance. I did want to just clarify that those are items that are generally part of the development plan phase of this type of project, not necessarily generally available here when everything's being finalized. I just wanted to ensure that that is to be as expected for some of those items that were pending. For example, where the final drainage plan or those kind of items, those are typically parts of the final development plan, from my understanding.
Correct.
Yeah, so it is kind of, that's to be expected that not everything would be completely finalized at this point because they can't move on to the development plan until they've reached beyond this. So I just want to make that clear.
You are absolutely right.
Because a lot of people are concerned about that, but
Mhm.
rest assured, those
Yep.
aren't things that would go
Yeah.
unnoticed.
This is just kind of the step one. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Have your company thought about just utilizing the old plot and going to zero landscape? Or I know with our new codes we got, we were talking about going to more of a zero landscape into the city and the community, correct? So how would that affect it?
We've discussed that, as far as, the builder can do all the front and side yard landscaping, but it gets difficult, if HOA to mandate zero scape in the backyard, because there's going to be some people that are just, neighborhood to neighborhood, they're just not going to follow that, or new people will move in. It's difficult to enforce. It's hard on the HOA, go knocking on someone's door that they haven't followed the right procedure in the backyard. And with those lots being so big, the backyards being really big, that was one of our concerns, so.
Now, was it on the R2 that the minimum size was 6,600 square feet? Have we thought about increasing it and kind of making a compromise in there?
We have, it'll be the kind of the same. We're averaging right around 6,400 square feet. We could possibly eliminate a lot or two from each block to get to that, to get to the average of 6,600 square feet. Does that make sense? So basically each block, for example, this one has 40 lots on it. We would take it down to like 38 to expand all lots, make them a little bit bigger to make that.
How many total lots would that make it at that point? Approximately.
Yeah, we'd probably subtract 12 to 14 lots. So we'd be adding another 44 instead of the 58.
Okay, so you can maintain an R2 and still get almost, what, 45 more lots involved with that? Is that correct?
We could get really close, yeah.
Right. Okay.
My understanding is too that you're following the design guidelines that Wellington recently published as our recommendation for landscape design.
Correct.
I do have one more question regarding, there was a lot of public feedback on roads, existing conditions of existing roads and what roads will look like with the new development. My question is, with a new development, what kind of road improvements would be expected for existing roads relating to your development? Probably more for Mr. Byrd, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And then to look forward to as part of the development coming.
Thank you, trustee Daly. I had noted that question from a couple of the commenters on the roads. So as part of any subdivision development and the public improvement piece, they're required to improve the roads adjacent to their property. And that's contemplated in the existing development agreement for Saddleback subdivision. So whether any changes are approved or not, the existing subdivision is required to improve its GW Bush or County Road 60 to the edge of their plat, and that would be a paved road standard.
That includes Ronald Reagan as well, Cody.
Correct. The Ronald Reagan, let's see, it's Reagan, that currently ends at McClellan, doesn't go east of McClellan. That's the northern access road to this subdivision, and they'd be required to improve that road from McClellan all the way into their subdivision as well. And that's also in the existing development agreement. There were a couple of other comments that I can also address if the board would like me to. I was aware of the dirt stockpile being moved and changed, and there's no permit required in the town to move dirt. As Mr. Geffroy pointed out, on the south end of the subdivision where that dirt stockpile is currently located is also the location of where the stormwater detention ponds would be created. So there's going to have to be some balancing there, but right now they're just removing the dirt stockpile for use on another site. The question on floodplain and drainage, that was one of the town engineering review comments on the preliminary plat. Trustee Daly brought up a good point that and I think it's worth clarifying even further that when the town looks at a development proposal, we have our subdivision standards have a preliminary step and a final step. And the preliminary step does not have the fine level engineered finished details for construction drawings. What it does is it provides the picture of this is what the developer is trying to accomplish to show that it meets the town standards, meets the town's requirements. And if the preliminary is approved, then the developer will go into final design phase. I'll address any staff comments or board, planning commission, parks board, feedback between preliminary and final to accomplish all of those requirements that are asked of them to do. So that is our standard practice. It's built into our code and procedures to have the presentation at a higher level for preliminary and then a more detailed level for final when the board would be considering final approvals and infrastructure improvements in a development agreement. Talk with the traffic on County Road 60. There was a comment about the town's infrastructure and timing. At least that's how I understood the comment. And I think that's worth follow up on that the town's water treatment plant and wastewater reclamation facility projects are currently underway with expected completion dates in fall of next year, pending no delays. But the timeline for development of a project like this, we still have the final plat for the entitlement development agreement amendments that likely would not be accomplished before end of the year. And then there's still the public improvement construction phase for pipes, stormwater ponds, roads, et cetera. So if all the approvals were granted, the developer may be looking to move dirt over the winter to do infrastructure in the spring, and lots wouldn't be available for issuing permits where the water and wastewater demand would impact our systems until after the treatment plants are online and operational. If that's a continuing concern, we can certainly add language to the development agreement amendments to make sure that the timing is such that permits are not going to impact the town's facilities. There was also a couple of comments about Xeric landscaping, and I think Mr. Geffro did speak to that. Just as a refresher or reminder, the town has adopted standards for irrigation design and landscape design. And when we adopted those in conjunction with the land use code, the board was not willing to require that of residential developments. It was more of a guide and a best practice. And so we still urge residential development, redevelopment to adhere to those. And those conversations have been had with the developer builder here in this scenario. They have ventured so far as to say that they would write their restrictive covenants to include Xeric principles in the front yards. As Mr. Geffro alluded to, enforcement of backyards is a challenge that would be a challenge for town staff as well. So certainly under the existing regulatory framework, it's not a requirement, it's an encouraged best practice. And there has been a willingness to accomplish that for the front yards where the HOA could see it and enforce it a little easier. And there was also a comment about impacts to schools, and PSD had already signed off on the original approval and understood that that development was contemplated in their student projections and their considerations for public schools. They were notified of the proposed plat. We didn't receive any feedback from PSD. They'll get another notice when we do the final plat with the final lot layouts and lot counts, and they'll have another opportunity to respond if they have any comments at that time. I think those were the highlights that I wanted to capture, and I'll of course stand for any questions.
Do we require, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
It's all yours.
Just had a quick question. You'd mentioned on the whole portion, the HOA is able to more easily control the xeriscaping in the front yard. Is there a way that you can just set the house back farther on the property so that there's more of the front yard and less of a backyard as well? Is that an option within the development, or is there a requirement that a house has to be so close to this street?
I'll answer that from a town staff perspective first. The town requires a minimum front yard setback, and that's our standard practice so that houses aren't built right up on the sidewalk. It has room for vehicles to park and things of that nature. So the town doesn't have a requirement for that. It could be a site-specific requirement, but it would be a little bit outside of the ordinary for practices that towns typically partake in. So it's something that could be considered. If that were desirable, it could be platted as such or put into it would probably need to be platted as a different type of setback. We'd have to increase the setback to accomplish that and become a new regulation that's not enforced anywhere else in town, but we could look at that. And Mr. Geffro might want to also respond in terms of what that means from a builder's perspective.
From a builder's perspective, it's a little difficult to sell the homeowner. Most people want kind of that as big as backyard as they can get. That's where they spend most of the time barbecuing, stuff like that. So it'd be a difficult sell, but we could definitely look into it.
So let me ask the question this way. So we're already talking about taking it from the gigantic backyards to smaller backyards, right? You're reducing the lot size.
Correct.
So if we were to say you're still going to allowed to have a larger lot, but we're just going to shift the house farther back, you'll have a larger front yard, but you won't have as large. Maybe it's still a little bit larger. Would that be any different because you're already proposing the same thing under the changes? You're already proposing to reduce the size of the backyard.
Yeah, I think it'll just affect the depth. Obviously the first plot, like you said, they're larger. Yeah, like I said, just something we could look into, longer driveways. Right now, your typical driveway is about 32 to 33 feet long. You'd be looking like, 40 to 40. It's a long driveway.
Okay.
For us, I mean, it just might be difficult whether we build the homes or another builder, we sell the lots to another builder. It could be a difficult sell to the prospective homeowners.
Thank you.
If I might, on that same thread, a potential consideration to accomplish somewhat what Trustee Gator was proposing was maybe changing the fence locations, pushing the fence further back would put more of the landscaping in a front or side yard that'd be visible from a street. It admittedly wouldn't have quite the same impact that Trustee Gator proposed, but I'm trying to think of other alternatives along that same line. So that could be something that the builders could maybe work into the private covenants for where fences are placed.
Anything else? Okay. Quick question. I have two things. Circling back on the school questions, do we require a school land dedication with annexations and developments?
The school district has the opportunity to request land at the time of subdivision plat. And as I mentioned before, they did not request that for the original approval, and they have not responded with anything of that nature for the replat. I won't hold PSD to it because I know that their plans change also, but the last conversations that we had with their planner staff that's no longer working for PSD, his indication to town staff was that PSD felt very good about their position for properties for providing an additional elementary school and a future middle school on the same site as the current middle school, high school. That campus-like setting was the district's plan for accomplishing schools for the town's expected continued growth, and that they were not looking for additional sites for schools outside of that. That was their comment at the time. I won't hold them to it. I know things change. But that was the last feedback that we'd heard.
And then you mentioned before, they'll have an opportunity to comment again before final plat.
Yeah, they'll receive the final plat notice and have an opportunity to respond or attend the hearing if they choose.
Excellent. Well, that kind of just segues right into just reinforcing what Trustee Daly had mentioned, that this is essentially a pencil drawing. It gives the developer an opportunity to get an idea of what the flavor of the community is for this type of development. And then before they invest in all of that time and money in the engineering plans to address the things that were mentioned this evening, like the drainage concerns and that sort of thing, we have to get through this preliminary piece. We can set conditions and additional requirements that have to be made or addressed before that final plat is approved. And if those conditions and those requirements aren't met, then that final plat does not have to be approved. So Mr. Byrd, did I hit that process?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. And it's not uncommon for developers to not do the details until they have a baseline for what they're designing to. Sometimes things change based on preliminary feedback. So you're absolutely right. I do want to point out though, that because this particular proposal has the rezoning associated with it. The ordinance that was drafted and put in your agenda packet, if the board chose to approve the zoning, that would be a final action. The preliminary would have to come back for a final approval for the plat. So those two they're being presented at the same time to be transparent, to show the relationship between the zoning request and the platting. The way it's been presented to you tonight, you could take final action on the rezone, and action on the preliminary plat would still have a secondary step for final.
Okay, and just to like dumb it way down and get out my crayons and paper here. So what you just said is, so like the ability to be able to do the more condensed density is the change to the zoning. But all of the other conditions that we heard this evening regarding like the drainage and other things are part of that final plat, so that the subdivision development agreement piece. So
correct.
When you start throwing all the professional planning director terms out there, I kind of get lost. So I just wanted to bring it back and make sure I've got that.
You've got it. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Any further questions or comments from the Board of Trustees? Excellent. Can I get a motion and a second on the agenda item?
Are we going to have deliberations?
You will.
Okay, after the motion and second, we're going to do deliberations.
Yes.
Okay, I just know the plan. Thank you.
I've got a boatload of comments. Should I make them now?
We'll wait until we get the
Okay.
motion in a second. And then I'll go down the line.
I move that we approve ordinance number 7, 2023, an ordinance rezoning a portion of Saddleback subdivision from R2 residential low density to R3 residential medium density.
I'll second.
You ready? Okay, so any final comments from the board? We'll start with trustee Gator.
Right, so I will roll through. I separated this out by the findings for the rezone versus the replat, so I'm just going to kind of run through them in that order. So the first finding that we're looking at is the rezone is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the intent stated in the land use code. As Mr. Bird mentioned, it does meet the capacity, dwelling unit capacity of 6 dwelling units per acre. But the area was also imagined as low density. So I have that as really neither a negative or a positive, kind of in the middle. The rezone is consistent with the stated intent of the proposed zoning district. I find that, yes, that is true. The uses of single family homes definitely fits within the medium density usage. The rezone will not result in adverse impacts of natural environment, air, water, noise, stormwater management, wildlife, vegetation, or impacts will be mitigated. I don't really have either a positive or negative. I don't think we were presented on really facts that would go either way on that. Rezone of the subject property will not result in material adverse impacts to surrounding properties. That I find is a negative. I think there was a lot of comment tonight about traffic impacts, if nothing else, that would be a negative impact to other properties. So just by increasing the density. So I found that as a negative. Facilities and services, roads, transportation, water, gas, electricity, police, fire, protection, and sewage waste disposal are available to serve the subject property while maintaining adequate levels of service to existing development. Roads specifically were a big concern that I had coming into this. This was raised by several members of the public. Water is a concern. I think this is separate from the rezoning, but if we were to do something, there would need to be something put in place. I agree, something in the agreement saying that no permits will be pulled until the plant completion is done. So that I do find is a negative, both from the impacts, because I believe the overall impact of higher density will lead to more water usage in that area, and then especially with the road. So that was a negative. Number 6, the rezone is consistent with any other prior approvals or official plans and policies created under the guidance of the plan for the area. Didn't really see any evidence either way. So on the rezone, I had 2 for it, 2 against it, and 2 that were in the middle. So kind of inconclusive on that. The big thing that I think is, I think there's options that can be done without having to rezone it as medium density with looking at maybe going down to the 6.4. So it's still a smaller property size than originally, but doesn't need to be rezoned as medium density. So I'm leaning towards, I don't know that I like that. So moving on to the replat, because these are all together. Number one, we have the preliminary plat represents a functional system of land use and is consistent with the rationale and criteria set forth in the code and comprehensive plan. I think it does meet that. So that one I had as a positive. The land use mix with the property conforms to the town's zoning district map and furthers the goals and policies of comprehensive plan. I think it does line up with that if we do rezone it. That one's kind of dependent on the rezone, because if we rezone it, then it matches. Utility design is adequate at a capacity that promotes the town's character while strengthening the town's vitality. I don't think we're there with the utilities yet. And so I think that that brings in some challenges. So I do have that as a negative. The transportation design, number 4, meets the intent of the comprehensive plan to provide needed increased connectivity and reduce traffic impacts and encourage walkability. I do find that as a negative. And again, Mr. Bird did mention a lot of the transportation challenges can't be solved by the subdivision, but it doesn't negate the fact that if we're adding in 500 additional trips a day, that there's going to be a negative impact. And we don't currently have the ability to solve that problem with the overpass. So that's a negative. Number 5, I have negative impacts on adjacent land uses have been identified and satisfactorily mitigated. I don't believe that's the case. Again, I don't know the developer can, especially on the transportation stuff. But I think adding those additional houses would cause a problem. 6, there's a need or desirability within the community for the applicant's development, and the development will help achieve the balance of land use and or housing types within the town according to town's goals. Really for that, I didn't have an answer to that until members of the public spoke tonight. And I think that really overwhelmingly, there was a lot of concerns about this coming in. So I'd find that it fails this. So overall, while I could go either way on the rezoning portion, this property actually was R2 used to be a medium density zoning before we did the changes. So it was actually zoned as medium density prior. I do not feel that this actually meets the requirements for the changes in the replat. I think there were some good options that were brought up, and I know that this is a preliminary, but I think honestly, if we're considering further restrictions, it would be wise of us to put those restrictions in place now so the developer can decide whether they want to continue through the process. So with that, those are my comments.
Trustee Daly.
That was a lot, so I'm trying to catch up. All right, so I'm losing my voice, guys, sorry. I sound crazy. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and list some of the pros and cons I heard that spoke to me first, and then I'll go into the specific findings. The things that I heard that spoke to me a lot is that the old plan, had it come before us now without a water source, would not have been approved. And that these changes were intended to accommodate and answer those concerns. So I do appreciate that. One of the major things I heard a lot was items relating to the comprehensive plan. And that mentions improvement of diversity of housing and improvement on options for affordability. And when we're talking about affordability, likely it's the home costs, given it's on a smaller lot. It's also the water costs. It's also shared costs for HOA fees. Those will be split among more houses, among many other things. The other things in the comprehensive plan that they really promote is improvement in trail system. This means a lot to me. Trail system, open spaces, and parks. Everything within the new plat and afforded by the zoning changes improves that substantially in this area. With the improvements of the trail system that were mentioned in the staff notes, we didn't talk about that a lot, but it was brought up in public comment that the connectivity from a trails system perspective is going to be improved. The park within that neighborhood is now going to be more utilized and usable based on the new design. And that's going to be really important to those living within that community. When we talk about within the comprehensive plan, it mentions that we need to focus on purposeful growth. And what I think that means, and from my perspective, is that if the conditions change, whether it's the environment, whether it's the economic conditions or anything like that, we need to accommodate those rather than going with previous plans that are no longer applicable or servicing our community. So I really appreciate an opportunity to look at a different option. And it looks like regardless of our decision tonight, you know, within that zoning district, there is still an opportunity to pursue still decreasing the size of lots, but not necessarily matching the specific plan. So the part that Trustee Wiegand brought up where within that same zoning district, the potential is only a difference of, from my calculations, 12 houses, rather than looking at the 53, but actually considering 12 when considering the actual limitations of the zoning. The other item is that the intended use of that property based on zoning does allow for up to 6 dwelling units, and we're talking about 3.7. So although it does mention or need a zoning change based on lot size, it's still within the intended like lower density actual living when it comes to how many people live in how much space. So all of those items are, you know, what is allowed within our code and within that. So when it comes to the actual findings regarding the comprehensive plan, within the findings in the staff review, I agree with all those items, but I would add more based on the diversity of housing and affordability pieces in the comprehensive plan. And then the rezone is consistent with the stated intent of the proposed zoning districts. It actually, it meets within R1 for the higher level of density. So, and then falls within the expectations of the medium density. I can go into every single detail. I don't want to go through every single finding. My consensus in general is that I agreed with the findings that's provided as the staff recommendations. I thought they were very thoughtful and thorough. The major ones that I do want to highlight is that it will not have adverse impacts to the natural environment. Given this is not we're going to have a development or not, is there's already an approved development. So we're talking about just changing what's already approved. So we're not talking about suddenly having an impact of more residents. I mean, it is more, we did acknowledge that, but I think a lot of people are comparing it to a field versus a development. And I definitely want to make sure that that's kind of a consideration. So, and then this development will impact and improve on a lot of the utilities. So obviously there's no utilities right there that could support this development as of now. And that's exactly why these developments are required to improve utilities and put in utilities. So that is part of that process. And based on what is approved is what they will accommodate and plan for. So that is there. We talked about the dwelling units. All utilities will be accommodated as needed and as required by our town. That's not going to be a question. That will be what's required. And I think my other major, sorry, I'm going through my notes right now to see, I don't want to reiterate everything we already talked about. We're talking a lot about water usage. I understand that. I appreciate being more water conscious and smarter. That makes a lot of sense. To me, though, what stood out among that, because that's obvious, that's, you know, outdoor irrigation needs are less, overall irrigation needs will be less regardless of more homes. But to me, the part that I highlighted the most that wasn't acknowledged is the affordability piece. And that's brought up under several of the findings that we didn't really delve into when we were talking earlier. So that affordability piece is mentioned several times as reasons for approval. All right. That's all I got. Thank you.
Mr. Bird, can you put the findings of approval up on the screen just so that everybody can see them? While you're doing that, I'm just going to go through all my comments here because I've got a lot. Regarding the existing platted lot size of approximately 11,000 square feet, about a quarter acre, while I do appreciate comments regarding xeriscaping as it currently exists, I can't imagine having to water nearly a quarter acre of property considering the current rates. For reference, my lot on Sumner Street is 7,281 square feet. The proposed lot size with an average of 6,500 square feet is fairly comparable to what already exists in the meadows. Considering that the minimum lot size for R2 is 6,600 square feet for detached units, the rezone proposal is just under the minimum lot size required for R2, which necessitates in R3 zoning. To comment on what Trustee Gator had mentioned earlier, I actually can't imagine my house sitting any further back than where it already is. The depth of my backyard is pretty shallow as it is. Regarding finding D, also mentioned by Trustee Gator, the fact that this replat includes nearly 4.5 acres of additional open space and drainage will certainly help with drainage concerns versus the prior plat. Regarding the topic of increased water usage, my experience with single-family homes is that depending on the lot size, of course, they typically use much more water irrigating outdoor property than what's used inside the home. As an example, during the months of May to September, I'm using almost 6,500 gallons of potable water for outdoor irrigation, whereas inside my home, I'm using between 2,000 to 3,000 gallons a month. So significant difference there. To clarify regarding some of the other comments made, we're talking about adding 58 additional lots here. There were already going to be new homes built here considering the already approved plat plan. So this certainly isn't a question of having no homes on the property at all. Regarding dirt movement, I think the developer is entitled to move dirt considering they're already approved for the existing zoning and plat plan. The town is limited to roughly 85 to 90 new building permits a year. These homes are not going to pop up overnight, especially considering other ongoing home building projects in Wellington. The proposed rezone plat includes no multifamily development. I think that was made clear earlier. And so as far as the findings for approval go, I agree with finding A, finding B, finding C, considering, like I said, the 4.5 additional acres of drainage and open space. I believe I would agree with same comment kind of goes for finding D there as well. Finding E, I think we are good there considering that G.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan are going to be paved and expanded out. Clearly, the big question in the room is the overpass piece, which unfortunately the town has little to no control over considering CDOT. Obviously, we will continue to work with them to get that prioritized, but as it sits, I would agree with finding E, and I would also agree with finding F. So I am good with the rezone findings. And as far as the plat findings, I would agree with finding A. I would also agree with finding B. Utility design is finding C. The utility design is at an adequate capacity that promotes the town character. Again, the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant will be online mid 2024. So I am good with that considering the current timeline. Transportation design, again, Ronald Reagan and GW are going to be improved. The big question in the room again is the overpass and how we continue to work with CDOT on that. So I would agree with finding D. Finding E, I believe negative impacts. Again, this was already going to have homes on it, so I'm not sure that I think that's kind of a moot point there. And finding EF, yeah, I would agree that this fits with the town goals and the comprehensive plan. So I'm good.
Trustee Wiegand.
Okay, one thing that we need to keep in mind, this has already been approved as an R2 development. And by the time that the building does start, the water and the sewer plant should be close to being completed at that point. So that problem's kind of moot. As far as all the roads and the infrastructure, I mean, we have to have that for whether it's an R2 or an R3. So I think that's already been accomplished. One thing that's gonna help our water usage over there is the cost of our water rates right now. That's pretty much a deterrent to anybody watering their yard very much. I think the one thing that we do have control of as far as the overpass goes is how many lots over there that we do approve. Even if it's 20 less, it's gonna be less impact. It's gonna be less problems for people getting to school. It's not gonna be easy. We got a lot of things we need to be doing here. You gotta figure if by replatting, if they took it to 6,600 square feet from their 6,210 right now, that's 390 square feet all. You're looking at a 10-foot by 39-foot area, not that much difference. So, I don't think we have to go to an R3. We can keep it at an R2. They can replot, and then a little bit bigger lots. But I think it's going to be controllable. And, again, we got traffic problems over on that side. We got water problems on that side. One thing that we can help to control the problem is by eliminating, if it's 12 lots, 20 lots, whatever they come up with. I think that's going to at least help a little bit. I wish we were on the radar for an overpass improvement. I wish we were on the radar for even a bridge going over the overpass. I know when we were at the CMA last week or whenever it was, they had one exhibitor there that talked about the overpass bridges for foot traffic. Even something like that would help. So I think the city has to be looking at convenience, safety for the kids. And I don't think we can take this real lightly. I think we need to keep it in R2. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any amendments or to the motion?
Did we want to consider an amendment for condition for permits issued only after the completion of the water and wastewater treatment plants? Is there any interest in that?
That would usually be addressed as part of the development agreement at that stage, just
Okay,
for your
that makes
information, right?
more sense.
Not as part of the
Better.
zoning or the preliminary process.
Is that something I think that would be beneficial for the applicant to know? I would agree. If this is going to approve, I would be in agreement with that. It might be good if the board feels one way or the other to let the applicant know so that they can be aware of that moving forward.
I would reiterate maybe a comment that maybe a lot of residents aren't aware of, which is that we are limited to roughly 85 to 90 new building permits a year due to the fact that the plants aren't online yet. So that is kind of already built in, I would say.
1 year or 2 years is that limit going to be on? The plant's going to be done, the sewer and the water plants both.
I think that's something the board can talk about once the water and wastewater treatment plan are online. Mr. Byrd, do you feel like you've heard enough from the trustees this evening regarding direction and clarifications for the developer for final plat?
I believe so. Thank you. I think the one question that I have was on the comments around the lot size, and trustee Wiegand commented pretty articulately on the difference between what's allowed under the R2 for 6,600 square feet versus what was proposed. And I think we talked about it earlier, but maybe it wasn't explained as well as it needed to be, but it wasn't just the lot size, it was the lot width for the housing product type that was proposed for this development that was driving it wasn't just that we want a smaller lot, it was the lot width would be more efficient to get the right number of houses to achieve the irrigation mix. So I just wanted to highlight that was two parts. There was the dimensional standards of the R3 zoning in addition to the lot size.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. May I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
No.
trustee Daly,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Yes.
Vote is 3-2. 3 in favor, 2 against.
Okay. Moving on. We will now consider ordinance number 08-2023, an ordinance adopting by reference the National Electric Code 2020 edition or the succeeding edition currently adopted by the Colorado State Electrical Board, Division of Professions and Occupations, Department of Regulatory Agencies as updated from time to time. Mr. Byrd.
Can you give us 1 second
Oh,
while
sorry.
Trustee Teets comes back online?
Yes. Oh, would
Thank
you, you know what? Let's take a recess. We
Okay.
will reconvene in
Perfect.
10 minutes. Can I get a motion? Do I need a motion?
So moved.
All right, here we go. 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting at 8:24 with a roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Here.
Trustee Daly,
Present.
Trustee
Here.
Teets,
Here.
Trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Here. Okay, I've already read the agenda item number 4. Mr. Byrd, would you please go ahead and present?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just as a reminder, Cody Byrd, Planning Director. The ordinance is introduced by Mayor Pro Tem McDonald is for adoption of the 2020 National Electric Code. I don't want that title to be misleading because the 2020 National Electric Code is already in force and in effect here in the town of Wellington. That took effect in January 1 of 2021. The state actually requires municipalities to adopt and enforce the current adopted version of the National Electric Code that the state adopts. The State Electrical Board has the authority to adopt and update and revise those codes, and they adopt the new electric code is usually when it comes out. They're contemplating doing that again here for the 23 National Electric Code. But really, the purpose of this ordinance was town staff has received a number of questions regarding our ordinance. When project managers, electricians, developers are looking at our codes, they keep calling and asking us, why does your code say 2005 NEC? And we have to explain to them, well, the reason it says that is because when it was originally adopted, that title was there and it just has stayed in place, but the town automatically mirrors what the state adopts for the National Electric Code in our current ordinance. So we've continued to keep pace with the requirements of the state and using the same electrical code that they are. But when we found that that confusion in our ordinance, we dug a little deeper and we found some additional clarifications and cleanups that we're really recommending need to be done to make sure that our municipal code is kept up to date. So this is really a series of technical fixes that we've outlined here in this draft ordinance, including fixing the title so it removes the 2005 reference that's out of date. It more accurately references the publication information for the National Electric Code book. It's published by the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. And so we more accurately describe that publication information. And it cleans up the ordinance too, because our old ordinance didn't reference all of the applicable state statutes and requirements that says that we have to do these things. And so we've incorporated those references into this new ordinance as a cleanup to make sure that our ordinance is tight and doesn't have any ambiguity. So that's really the nuts and bolts of what we're proposing. Is it doesn't actually change the electric code that's already in effect in the town. It's a technical cleanup to make sure our ordinances read correctly, and we hopefully can eliminate some of the questions and confusion around our old ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions or comments from the board regarding this agenda item? Okay, excellent. Are there any comments from the public on this agenda item? Okay. May I have a motion on this item, please?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 08-2023, an ordinance adopting it by reference the National Electric Code 2020 edition or the succeeding edition currently adopted by the Colorado State Electrical Board, Division of Professions and Occupations, Department of Regulatory Agencies, as updated from time to time.
Second.
Okay. Are there any final comments or direction from the Board of Trustees regarding this item?
I do have one comment really quick. The only issue that I know, and I know that it can't be changed now, is section 86-40 violations. It is unlawful and constitutes a public nuisance for any person to maintain any property, building, or other structure in the town in a condition which is in a violation of the building code or this chapter. My concern is those that are out of compliance might see more difficulty when it comes to getting permit approval without doing major alterations. I realize that this is something that has been laid out previously, but wasn't laid out this drastic where it says it's unlawful. That's one concern of mine, but I'll still vote to approve it. It just needs to be made note that there is a lot of out of compliance issues in town. The one thing I do want to give kudos is making sure that we're following through with licensing and the proper procedure for licensing, as we know that there is an issue in our town with unlicensed contractors. So it would be nice to see this more enforced.
Thank you, trustee Teets. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. May I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Bailey,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you up for this one too, Mr. Bird? Yep. All right. Next, we will consider two resolutions, resolution number 2023 and resolution number 21-2023. Resolutions finding substantial compliance of petitions for annexation for the Sage Farms annexation and the Village at Sage Farms annexation and establishing a date, time, and place for a public hearing. Mr. Bird.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As introduced, the two resolutions in front of you tonight, and we're presenting those together as one packet because they're really interrelated and we didn't want to duplicate all the same information for you. Hopefully that helped. But the request was regarding a petition submitted by a landowner, and the map is on page 75 of your packet. The landowner of the area south of GW Bush along Highway 1, constituting approximately 300 acres, has requested annexation into the town limits for consideration for future development proposals. And in the context of municipal government for annexation proceedings, the steps that the town has to follow for an annexation is very regimented and outlined explicitly in state statutes. Gives us every step, every timeline, every requirement, every notice that we have to follow. And the start of that begins with the resolutions that have been presented to you in your packet. The first step in that is adoption of a resolution, and the resolution simply is a finding that the proposed annexation petitions are substantially compliant with the requirements of state law. And the resolution sets the date of a public hearing when the Board of Trustees will formally consider the annexation request. That's it. That's all those resolutions do, is substantial compliance and sets a date for the public hearing. If the board approves the resolutions, in the meantime, before the public hearing, staff has a lot of work to do to provide notices, publications, work with the property owner, develop an annexation impact report. Zoning is considered concurrently with an annexation request, and under state law, we have to zone it within 90 days of the annexation ordinance being adopted. So the zoning is going to be presented with the requests and must be adopted no later than 90 days after annexation. So a lot of tight timelines that we have to satisfy. If there's need for more time and information, those things can be continued, but we'll have to go through those procedures at that time. So there's a lot more information that's going to be coming out to you tonight, but the starting point for annexation is these resolutions. The subject property itself, as I mentioned, is about 300 acres. It's actually two contiguous parcels, but they're not in the shape that the map shows you. The reason the developer is requesting the annexations be considered in this parcel configuration and the series annexation can be considered concurrently, like we're presenting it here under state law. But the nuance to the reasoning behind that is that the particular zoning proposal that the developer has, we've asked them to pay very close attention to our comprehensive plan guidance for what these properties should look like in accordance with our comp plan. And the comp plan calls out for an activity center with commercial activity at the intersection of Highway 1 and County Road 58. And that's the furthest away from the infrastructure, so it'll be the last piece to go. And it could be 5 years, 10 years, could be longer if the economy changes. So it was very important to town staff to capture the commercial component and have that locked in for the town to have that commercial opportunity in accordance with our comp plan. But the developer recognizes the amount of time that it may take to officially develop that, and so wants to look at splitting some of the annexation agreement considerations so that it doesn't tie that property up in ways that makes it undevelopable. And so there's certainly some ways to do that, but that is why it's being presented as the two annexations instead of one single piece. But staff felt it was important to make sure that we got it all at once to get the commercial components to it. So that's a lot more information than you have to consider tonight, but I wanted to explain the why, the two different annexation pieces for that. We did include a copy of the resolutions in your packet. We also included the petitions that were signed and submitted by the landowner. It's one landowner, 100% ownership of all of the property that's proposed for annexation. Staff reviewed all of the applicable criteria of the petition and the state statutes and the town municipal code. And staff recommends that all of the findings for substantial compliance have been satisfied and this property is eligible for annexation. It's within our GMA and our comprehensive plan. So staff's recommendation is to adopt the resolutions to begin the process of considering the annexation and schedule the public hearing for board's formal consideration. Be happy to answer any questions.
I just had a quick question. I see the two portions down there. There is like a blank portion, it looks like, that's not being annexed right at the corner of the freeway or of Highway 1. Is that state land, or is there a reason that one little square of land is not?
It's a different owner, and that owner has not
Got it.
requested petition.
Okay,
Or not
perfect.
requested the annexation.
Okay, because you just made the comment about the commercial in that area, so that owner would have to be, okay, thank you. That answers my question.
You're welcome, thank you.
Trustee Daly.
Exciting that more people want to be in part of Wellington. No, I don't have any questions. The petition is very straightforward.
Trustee Mason. Trustee Wiegand.
Just a quick question. Open space. Do we have anything planned for that area down there at all? Is that going to be part of this annexation, or? I know we want to have some space in between us and the new big addition that's going in down there. Anything in the plans on that?
So I guess I would answer it with, that's certainly part of the considerations that we will look at. The annexation, the question of annexing is really asking whether or not the property is appropriate to bring into the town limits and whether the town can provide infrastructure to support development of that property as it's proposed. Our development standards require open space as part of a subdivision plat. There's a formula for how much open space is required by the town. So that's certainly a piece of it. But I think really what Trustee Wiegand is speaking to is a little bit bigger picture in terms of protecting the community separators between Wellington and Fort Collins. And so in our comprehensive plan, we identify what we anticipated as future land uses in these areas. And at this particular intersection, the consideration for the comprehensive planning purposes was that we could provide it with infrastructure to support a higher level intensity of development. And because of the intersection of a state highway, major roadways and major connecting roads into Fort Collins, there's going to be a high volume of traffic at that intersection, which would make it an appropriate location for commercial and higher density scale residential to support that. So that was the comp plan consideration. Further south beyond this is where we would anticipate the community separation and buffer space to occur, probably south of Larimer County Canal is the big irrigation ditch that runs through there. The comprehensive plan had kind of contemplated the areas south of there would be the open space and community separator area.
Trustee Teets?
Yes, just a few questions. Under this agreement for annexation, who covers the cost of the infrastructure?
So, excuse me. The developer is responsible for the cost of infrastructure to support their development unless the town agrees otherwise, which might include things like oversizing pipes to accomplish future growth capacity in other areas adjacent to that property. If any cost sharing were agreed to by the town, it would be at the time of a development agreement for a particular specific development proposal or development agreement. The annexation considerations does not typically contemplate the detailed analysis for how much the costs are, which projects will be constructed, because we don't have that level of information yet until a development is proposed after the property is zoned and designed and other things. So, but to the question, generally speaking, development is responsible for paying its own way. And that is part of what we'll look at is in the annexation impact report is what is the expected order of magnitude for public infrastructure needed to serve this area, and start to identify if there are significant trunk lines, oversizing, sanitary lift stations, things of that nature. If those are determined to be requirements to serve this development, there'll be some general language identifying who would be responsible for paying for that, or if those are projects that the town would consider cost sharing in. But we don't answer the final details on the numbers and who is forced to do what. It's the general understanding that development pays its own way.
Perfect. Now, my other question, and I know it's probably a question of many others, is you're looking at a development, probably 7-year development with hundreds of more homes. What about water?
So yes, those are considerations that will be looked at as part of the annexation proceedings. Water is obviously of utmost concern to the town. Staff is very cognizant of the concerns, and that is part of the overall evaluation that takes place during the annexation proceedings.
So in this route, I don't have any more questions, but I do have some feedback to offer when we come back around. Mayor Pro Tem, if that would be all right.
Sure, during final deliberation.
Correct.
Excellent.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Can we open it up for public comment? Okay, no public comment. I'll bring it back for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 20-2023 and resolution number 21-2023, resolutions finding substantial compliance of petitions for annexation for the Sage Farms annexation and the Village at Sage Farms annexation, and establishing a date, time, and place for a public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay. Back to the Board of Trustees for final comments or direction.
I think all the comments that have been done by the trustees are very valid and great concerns for our community, and very insightful. But I do want to just draw attention to the actual resolutions, and that they are specific for just accepting the substantial compliance of petitions. So there's no decision on an annexation. We don't have any of the details, but the nice thing is if this were to move forward, that's when we would be provided all those details that have been asked about tonight. So I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves by asking very specific questions about the property and what their future uses will be, given that we're really just at the petition level right now. So just as a consideration, I know all those concerns and questions are very valid and helpful, but for this specific agenda item, they are not necessarily applicable.
Okay, Trustee Teets.
No, that was, and I am aware that this is simply a filing of an annexation. That is not what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is you are allowed to, you can find compliance, but you can also find, and Mr. Sapienza, correct me if I'm wrong, cause for there not to be an additional annexation right now if there is no funding moving forward. If you know that there is nothing to provide services, that can be a cause, and trustees are allowed to vote in that way. Correct, Dan?
The resolution before you today is really just a finding of compliance of the petitions filed with the town. There are very specific statutory requirements.
Mhm.
Funding considerations, infrastructure considerations are not really part of that at this point. Really, this is about whether the petitions for annexations meet those statutory requirements, and I believe there are 4 of those that are laid out there. So the issue of funding is certainly, as has been mentioned, a consideration and something to be discussed moving forward. But at this stage, it's looking at whether these petitions meet the state statute requirements for annexation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Trustee Wiegand. Trustee Gator. Trustee Mason. Okay, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Bailey,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Yes. Okay. For our last action item this evening, we have resolution number 23-2023. A resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, amending expenditures for the fiscal year 2022 budget. Ms. Garcia and Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and trustees. Patty Garcia, Town Administrator. The item before you is a budget amendment due to the increase in operating expenses in the 2022 Water Fund budget. As you know, the town of Wellington has had a lease agreement with North Poudre Irrigation Company since 1983 for water usage and raw water assessments. The approved budget for raw water purchases was $2,885,854, and that invoice was received in November 2022. And the invoice that was received in December 2022 was for $2,674,893.38. This budget line item is not just for the lease agreement, but for other water assessments. Staff had concerns when we received the invoice related to the 8.25% interest rate that was used by North Poudre for the water usage rate calculation. Staff had done research through surveying of other regional banks, and a proposal to reduce the interest rate to 6.32% was presented to the North Poudre Board, which would bring the invoice closer to what had been budgeted. We learned in late March that the North Poudre Board did not approve the modified interest rate, but did offer the town to make a partial payment for the 2022 invoice with a remainder due in 2024. This option was discussed internally over a couple months, but we felt the best approach was to bring the full invoice to the trustees for consideration. We continue to be in active negotiations with North Poudre regarding the 1983 agreement. Discussing the high invoice for 2022 was an opportunity to show how the extreme variability in the rate calculation impacts our budgeting process. All invoices for the raw water purchase line item totals $2,699,594.18, which puts expenditures $640,740 over the approved budget. There is no interest being calculated on the North Poudre invoice at this time. We anticipate around $500,000 in savings in water fund expenses in 2022, and the balance would be paid out of fund balance. We won't know the exact amount coming out of the fund balance until the 2022 audit is complete. Approval of the budget amendment will permit the payment of the 2022 North Poudre Irrigation Company fee for water usage under the 1983 agreement. This is something we've worked on really hard. Megan has worked very hard to try to find options for paying this invoice. We finally just came to the realization that this was a budget amendment, and we were fairly certain we have 500,000 at least in savings from 2022, and we're still working on, if we need to pull that additional the 160,000 out of fund balance, which is typical for most municipalities when they have budget amendments like this. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. You're welcome. Okay, I'll open this up to the Board of Trustees for comments or questions for town staff. We'll start with Trustee Teets, please.
I have nothing at this time.
Trustee Wiegand?
Appreciate all the hard work you've done on this. I know it's kind of out of our control at this point because of that, 1984 agreement.
1983, yeah,
So hopefully we can get that resolved. Thank you.
that's the plan.
Trustee Gator?
Yes, I'd like to concur with trustee Wiegand. I do appreciate that the bill is out of our hands in terms of the agreement with North Pooter. One question I had is I know staff had said that we are expecting at least $500,000 in savings in the water enterprise. I did ask for details on where we're saving that money. So could someone please provide me with kind of where I'm glad to hear we had a $500,000 saving. I'd love to know where that's actually coming from.
I can look into that and get that to you in just a moment. We can take the rest of the questions, then I can
Okay.
find that for you. It's in the budget.
Trustee Mason? Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Gator. Did you have any other questions for staff?
The other question I have is, I guess more of a concern that this should have at least been brought to some level to our attention, that we had a $500,000 gap at least in our water enterprise that we're constantly having to adjust rates on. So it is concerning to me that the first that this has been brought to us is 8 months after the bill was received. But no other questions. I'd like to know where the money's coming from.
Okay, Trustee Mason?
Well, clearly we've got a bill here in front of us that needs to be paid. Ms. Smith and Ms. Garcia, I'm a little concerned and would just like some understanding as far as how the 8.25% interest rate used for the calculation came about when regional banks are suggesting 6.32%. Is that a number that NPIC can just manipulate at will, or how does that work?
Thank you for the question. Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works. So the agreement actually states, with some very broadly vague language, that the farm and ranch real estate interest rate as posted by a USDA organization is no longer in existence. It's been absorbed by other credit union banks over the years, will be utilized. The average, it also doesn't give a specification as to a date, and they have had a historical practice that they've utilized the interest rate as defined by a bank that they utilize, and they call for that interest rate at the time of year upon which they are developing the invoice. So it's a single snapshot for one time of year. And if you all recall, in the 2022, what's a water year is from November through October. So November of 21 through October of 22, interest rates were still at record lows at the beginning of 21 and ended at record highs November of 22, October, November of 22. So we suffered the consequences of that. That was part of the reasoning why we took forward a proposal to their board for consideration of utilizing an annual average as opposed to a snapshot in time, an annual weighted average based on the water, like how much water we used in each given month. The proposal was rejected, essentially based on the fact that this was the practice upon which they have always created their invoices, at least for the lifespan of the folks that are on the board and the current general manager. And there's not been a precedent to change it. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would just emphasize, certainly for the NPIC board that, obviously these types of things are very detrimental to the town's budget as far as that goes. So I'd like to emphasize that, certainly as we look at the 1983 agreement going forward and that sort of thing, that, some of these things we want to get worked out.
And that was as Ms. Garcia commented, that was something that we utilized this for, in particular, this invoice, to highlight the impact that this has. The conversations that we had at the board meeting at that time really covered around this being $600,000 beyond the highest budgeted amount we've ever even budgeted for that line item before for the town. And that's kind of where the offering that they made on their part to pay what was budgeted for 2022, flex the remainder to the 2024 budget where we could include it in our budgeting process for 2024. So it was there budgeted. But the reality is we have to make the payment, whether it's today or next week. We have the money today available in fund balance, which we do. There's no reason to risk an, imposition of interest on a delayed payment or anything like that, and to go ahead and make that payment now.
The 500,000 would be coming from capital improvements, projects that came in under budget. And it's not lined out specifically in the 2022 year end, but it is a process that we went through today to look to balance out that separately. And I can send that out to you guys.
Okay, I would like to see that. Is that like actually projects that came in under budget, or we're delaying projects to future years changes? I don't know which it is.
Projects that came in under budget predominantly.
Okay.
And then there were, I can look, but
Can you
there
look at-
were,
yeah, you did that work.
Okay, yeah, I for one am not comfortable voting on this until I've actually seen where we're coming up with the $500,000. Because that's concerning to me. I get it. We have the bill, we have to pay the bill. We're working through that with North Pooter, but I mean, our water enterprise, the only way that we get money is building more homes, which we are capped by our plant, or charging higher rates to the residents. And as if I am not incorrect, as I understand, our water plant is still slightly over in terms of the project from what was originally brought in from the loan. So we still have to, because the loan was brought in back in 2019, so it wasn't projected to what we finalized.
Correct.
So we were having to come up with the difference of that out of our fund balance. And so I want to make sure that we for sure have that money there that has been saved before we're just throwing money out of fund balance. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. I'd like to circle back to something that Ms. Smith said. I would like to applaud the very eloquent way that you said, essentially that the North Pooter made their decision based, that's just the way that they've always done it. We put a lot of time and effort into trying to provide something that seemed more sound, viably based off of the data that we were able to provide. And working with the North Pooter board is a very delicate and intricate process given our current water system and how we receive our water supply. And at the end of the day, we do have this 1983 agreement, and when we receive our invoice, we are subject to pay. So it's a difficult thing. We have to pay the bill. Staff is coming to us with a solution to get the bill paid. And I think that we have an obligation to meet that responsibility. So with that, I would like to.
So we do have some information. We did go through this exercise today, just not in time to get it out to the trustees. We were up to deadline. Sorry. So go on ahead, Megan.
We do have, there are a couple of projects that were deferred. For example, we already knew that we had originally budgeted for a pretreatment sonde at the drinking water treatment facility for the intake. That has been deferred, and so that's a $0. It's $40,000 in savings. So I mean, I don't know that I can send this out to you if you're looking for that. Okay, that's fine. I don't know if I need to line item this for you right now. It would.
No,
get
not right
lost.
now. Please don't
Okay.
right now. Go
Yeah,
ahead and
listen,
send it
I
out
would
to
just
the
be a bunch
board.
of numbers.
Thank you.
It does show,
A little over, an estimate at this point of a little over $500,000 in savings. But again, that won't be realized until the audit is complete and those dollars fall back to the fund balance.
Okay, thank you so much for the additional information.
Mayor
Thank
Pro Tem, Trustee Teets would like to talk.
Can we save it for deliberation, please? Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion and a second on the item. Okay, I'll make a resolution that we approve resolution number 23-2023, a resolution of the town of Wellington, Colorado, amending expenditures for the fiscal year 2022 budget.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We will now take deliberation from the Board of Trustees. Trustee Teets.
I do also agree with trustee Gator. I would like to see the numbers and see where the funds are coming from. Prefer not pulling from fund balance. I would like to know where the numbers are coming from. My main concern is that I know that it was going to be reported back to us, and I don't know if Ms. Smith and Ms. Garcia have those numbers yet. But I was hoping to see where our water fund balance was residing now with all of the accumulated moisture from the last few months. And if we were looking, I noticed that there was a decrease in the percentage of what was averaging for the first quarter. So my concern is are we tucking our tail to cover 2022? And in 2024, are we going to be tucking our tail again to cover 2023? As far as the additional costs in the water accounts, that's a main concern of mine. So I would more comfortably support moving this to our next regular meeting, if that's possible, so we can look at all those numbers and trustee Gator can understand where those numbers are, as he is head of the finance committee and they do nothing but look at the numbers for our community. And I would really like to hear more information on that before I were to make a vote on it today.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand.
I would like to see what Patty would have to say about, can we postpone it a week to do a vote? I mean, is that going to hurt anything in the process?
No.
I know we got a bill, we need to pay it. I know we got the money, we've talked about that before. But I think, you know, if we can satisfy some concerns here, and if it's not going to impact anybody, I think this is a good presentation, a good start. Then we can make the final decision next week.
Not a problem. Trustee Daly.
So far with the history of our board, we've made decisions, very, very hard decisions relating to water that says that we're going to solve problems now and not kick them to the future. We're not going to leave a new board responsible for our bills. We're not going to leave future residents responsible for the obligations that happened 2 years ago. So regardless, a bill is due, it needs to be paid. And I don't think future board and residents should have to pay that. I think it should be taken care of those who use that water. It will be a difficult decision. Well, a difficult, item to have to pay out, but it is what is due. And I really would not want to push that down the road. I don't, regardless of where the realized savings are coming from, very specifically, we still owe the money. So it doesn't really matter in my opinion, but it does matter for, future fund balance and other decisions that we need to make. But if we're not taking into consideration the money that we owe and pay, and then we're making decisions on fund balance after that, giving the future board the responsibility of paying that, I don't think that's right.
I don't think this is going to be a future board decision. It's going to be next week we would do it.
I mean, the 2024, their
Oh.
budget, because it would be part of their budget.
That would be part.
And that's a significant cost.
I will clarify what trustee Teets, what myself and trustee Wiegand had suggested was that we revisit this item next week, not that we push the expense into 24. I would agree with trustee Daly. I don't think this should become the next board's problem. But I want to make sure that I am making a decision based on actually understanding where things are coming from so that I understand where we're at.
And that is not a problem. We can just represent next week. We do have a special meeting that will be coming up for the financial management firm letter of engagement. That will be on a special meeting next week. Our representative from Baker Tilly will be here. We can add this to the agenda and we can just pop in this little spreadsheet that Megan has that shows that amount.
Okay, to finish the deliberation, trustee Mason.
I'd be fine to table it. If we want to wait till next week, that's fine.
I'd like to move that we table resolution number 20.
Excuse me, I already have. I think it's very important that we make sure that we pay our bills in a timely manner, whether we pay the bill today or next week, the bill is still going to be paid. I understand that the board is seeking clarification on exactly where those dollars are going to come from, but at the end of the day, the dollars are going to be spent, period. We have to pay the bill. It doesn't matter if we pay the bill today or next week, it still has to be paid. I think that staff has heard pretty loud and clear that we'd like a little bit additional clarification and detail on the item, but we do have a motion on the floor. So may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
No.
trustee Bailey,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
No.
trustee Wiegand,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Yes.
Motion fit.
Motion fits.
Yes.
Okay. Now we may entertain a motion to table it till next week or till a future date. If somebody wants to make a motion to table it to a specific meeting, we can entertain a motion.
The agenda item failed at this point.
I think there has to be a motion to reconsider at this point, correct?
That's
Mr.
So motion
Sapienza?
to reconsider.
So we can put this on the agenda for next week for a motion to reconsider if that's gonna be
Okay,
with additional information.
great.
We'll take care of it. Thank you.
All right. Circling back to the beginning to item 2B. My deepest apologies for skipping over our proclamation. And this one is especially near and dear to my heart. I take advantage of our parks and recreation opportunities here in the community more than any other amenity that we have. So I'm with great honor, happy to read this proclamation this evening. Whereas parks and recreation are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the town of Wellington. And whereas parks and recreation promote health and wellness, improving physical and mental health of people who live near parks. And whereas parks and recreation promote time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression. And whereas parks and recreation encourage physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, and many other activities like softball, designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas parks and recreation education activities such as youth sports form an integral component of youth development in our community. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the town of Wellington recognizes the numerous benefits derived from parks and recreation programs. Now therefore, I, Mayor Pro Tem Ashley McDonald of Wellington, Colorado, do hereby proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month. Okay. All right. We will now close the regular meeting and open the library board, the time being 9:06 p.m. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Gator,
Here.
trustee Daly,
Present.
trustee Mason,
Here.
trustee Teets,
Here.
trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a library update from our library director.
Oh. Just in case you ask me a question. Okie dokie. I am Ross Lajeunesse, Library Director, and I'm gonna make it clear to people that come up from the public and they're nervous. I also get nervous, so it's not just you. I need you to kind of pretend you're the mayor.
Okay.
Good evening, trustees, Mayor Pro Tem. As mayor, you set the tone in the climate. And by using your own words on public record, we are killing it. Throwing it back at you. Okay, now I can go back to Pro Tem. So out of respect tonight for a long evening, I know it's been a long agenda. I'm going to be as brief as possible and share just kind of 3 high-level updates. We had a work session. I shared the public library annual reporting numbers. The first are our numbers from the beginning of the year until last night. I couldn't get today's. I went through last night's. And our programming increases. Secondly, our reach and increase in collaborations with local, state, and national entities. And finally, the Youth Council. So just really quickly, I did run some numbers yesterday. From the 2nd of January of this year until last night, because we go budget year to budget year, we have added 212 new patrons. We have 18,970 items checked out of our library. It's pretty amazing for a rural library. We are just under 12,000 patron visits, or as I call them, patron engagements. I did share in the work session that I made the decision this year to remove the door counter. I have to have raw data. The door counter counts deliveries, courier, volunteers, friends of the library, staff. If anybody has seen this library, I'm in and out 17 times a day. That could compound numbers, and I don't feel comfortable reporting those numbers to the state. So these are raw numbers. So like I said, just under 12,000 patron visits, and we're just in July. We also, I included the summer events, the summer reading program events. We did ask last year for a budget increase in our programming line. We are using it very well. All of our events have been well attended. I've had 2 events where, again, I get nervous in here and I look at the occupancy and I open the partition so that we have extra. So that's really good. I do want to share gratitude for increasing our budget line last year. It has helped us connect to more people. It's helped us open up to youth, senior citizens, everybody, and the new residents. We have been experimenting with time to provide easier access for working families. Today, we had a foam event. I still smell like foam. We went later so that people could get off work, so that parents, dual parents could come and enjoy time with our kids. So we're also doing weekend things. We're trying things this year. There's some experimenting happening. This budget helps us do that. We haven't had a failure yet. We are doing pilot programs through intense listening and hearing of what residents desire. I sit down with them. I ask them questions, find out what they're missing and what they want. We've increased our art, our game clubs, our after-school programs, homework help, Lego club, gardening and xeriscaping classes, STEM programs, yoga for kids, yoga for adults, book clubs, author nights. That's just to name a few. We added the puppet show this year. It was great. So we're trying different things. If you walk into the library, it is produced a full house. Our footprint is so small for who we have now. You have to walk and not step on kids, which is great. It's very loud. We have noise canceling headphones. That's what we can do because it's so loud. If someone needs to study, we don't have a study room, we give them headphones. But it's great. There's a lot of joy in our library. We also have empty shelves, which is great for the summer reading program. They're flying off the shelves. So I wanted to take this moment to thank all of our loyal and extremely dedicated patrons. Moving on, we once again have increased our reach with partnerships and collaborations. I'm always looking to collaborate with someone. This includes local businesses, county programs such as Larimer County Workforce. We help teens with gainful employment. They are still employed. Larimer County Health and Human Services, mental health resources for youth, Colorado State University and its extension departments, and State of Colorado programs. We're currently working towards, not happening yet, but we are currently working very diligently on a Northern Colorado library partnership that would provide digital literacy and funding for ADA accessible technology in our library. For example, larger monitors for those who have hard visually impaired. They have adaptive keyboards. And we do have the population here in Wellington that would garner success from these materials. This would be free. I'm always looking for free. I remember the first time I presented, I said I was cheap, and you said thrifty.
Yes.
I am thrifty. This is all being done under budget. We are projected. I look at every quarter. Everybody knows the most used app on my phone is a calculator. I'm always checking numbers. We are good. I'd like to take time to thank with full gratitude our SRP sponsors. This is a very, very tenacious year. Businesses are worried. Every single sponsor I went back to said yes immediately with no question, and the majority of them doubled their sponsorship. Barnes & Noble, Wellington Parks and Recreation, Fort Fun, Owl Canyon, Urban Air, Walrus Ice Cream, Human Bean, Taco John's, Summit, they're now main event. They still accept the Summit cards, don't panic. Culver's, The Cakery, Sparge Brewing, Old Colorado Brewing, Jack's Outdoor, Trim Salon, Baumgars, Saddles to Paddles, Kanak Automotive, Hager's Barbershop, and Thistle. Please, we ask you, go use these businesses. They support us every year. Please use them. Don't just get one cupcake, get 7. So I really do want to take this time to thank all of our sponsors. It means everything to us. It alleviates our budget and the kids get excited and the adults. Finally, I'm going to move on to the Youth Council. Very proud of the Youth Council. So the Youth Council we've been working on for a year. It's had some changes. It is a youth council, and so we have allowed the youth to develop it and the youth to design it and what works for the youth. For those that are not aware, we developed a youth council that is fully funded by generous donations from residents. It is a discretionary fund. I'm sorry, you can't touch it. It is only for kids. Many donors would like to remain anonymous. However, they must know that the direct and intense difference it is making to our population of youth is enormous. I know they are watching. Thank you. The fund holds just under $8,000. $8,000, that's larger than some of my budget lines. And this is what our community has given our kids. It makes our kids feel seen and heard. The program is designed to be fully maintained and utilized by youth from beginning to end. And it is designed as a complete discretionary fund, like I said. My only role as the director is veto power or compromise in directions if there's a safety issue. That is it. We listen to our youth. I sit down with them. I have surveys, and we gain insight into what they truly want in our library and in our town. They compare their wants to our mission statement and the strategic plan. That is the one requirement. Sorry. They have discussions with one another. They design programming. They purchase materials, and they also reconcile within my budget. So they are learning the full process. So far, they've explored amateur radio, engineering resources, and tomorrow we are launching the guitar program led by another team in our community. There will always be a staff member there, as music was a consistent theme in survey. We purchased 5 youth-sized guitars. All programming is organic and moves in the direction that works best for all in the community. The kids learn organization, frugality, community-centered thought, program development, curiosity, compromise, budgeting, and healthy fiscal management. They know it's their money and they want to keep it for as long as possible, so they make wise choices. It has been a true honor to watch what happens when adults step back and let our youth explore. As a wrap up, I want to thank my staff who allows me to be crazy and allows me to chase things and to go running to municipal and allows me to run to Fort Collins. I really appreciate my staff. Please thank them when you go in. They work very hard, and many of them donate their time after staff hours. I want to thank the community, our patrons, and the board for continuing to support us intensely and hope to only continue providing access for all and increasing. I tend personally to abhor using I, but this one time I want to thank all with much gratitude, and it is an honor for me to serve this community. Good night, done. Oh, and any deliberations or questions?
Trustee Teets.
I've got nothing. Thank you for your commitment to the community and what you do for our library. I have actually participated in some of those foam events with my littles, so they absolutely loved it. No, so I would say keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Weekend.
I just wish you would show a little more excitement.
Mhm.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Stop, I'm shaking. Thank you,
Peter.
trustee Weekend.
You're doing a great job, Ross. You're bringing stuff to the library. I love what you're doing with the kids in the youth council. I'm excited to see that up and running. And being the one who's always concerned about finance and budget, I love the fact that you stay on top of that and control it. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Trustee Dave.
I had the privilege of attending a session at CML regarding libraries. And it was incredibly insightful, how each library for each community caters to specific needs of that community. But there was some we talked to the Greeley, the High Plains, so wow.
Oh, visit it.
And I was like, how do you pay for this? And they're like, oil. And I go, oh, dang it. But it's amazing how they cater to their community. But the one common theme amongst all the communities that presented, and ours as well, is that libraries are like the final and only place that you can gather without the expectation of spending money. And when it's such a simple phrase, but when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly where someone can go and gather or just be. And not have to spend any money. And then not only that, it's a safe space, welcoming to all. In this day and age, providing gathering spaces is, one of the top things that we can do to care for our communities and make sure that they have a safe place to go that's beneficial for all. So caring for, the mental health of our entire community. So appreciated. And I know that all are welcome and it is completely inclusive. And I appreciate that so very much. And meantime, also promoting creativity and providing resources, really valuable resources to our community. Those are those basic level things that we're accommodating, but it's so special about libraries. And then above and beyond that, you're doing all these amazing special things that are catered to our community and that what we need and want. And I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Trustee Mason.
Excellent job, Ross. Appreciate everything you do. So.
Thank you.
You do a fantastic job. It's been such a pleasure to watch the library grow and flourish in the capacity that has. And something else that has been really interesting, traveling across the state, meeting with other municipalities and interacting with other library districts, the impact that our ban on book banning has had across the state and other municipalities is just, there's no words for it. So kudos to this board and kudos to the library for all of the hard work that you do and for providing that platform and that safe space for our kids. Thank you so much for this presentation this evening.
You're welcome. Like I said, it's an honor.
You do great work.
Thank you. Get better, Mayor Josie.
Okay. I guess, are there any comments from the public? Okay. Any final comments from the board regarding the library board? Okay. We're going to close the library board and reopen the regular meeting at 9:22 p.m. The final item for this evening's regular meeting will be reports. Are there any reports from the town attorney?
Yes. Dan Sapienza. Thought I'd give you an update on an important agenda item that'll be coming before the board in a couple of weeks. As I'm sure you know, and as I'm sure the public knows, an appeal was filed regarding a site plan that was approved by the planning commission. That appeal will be held before this board on July 25th. That's the last regular meeting of this month, Tuesday, July 25th. An appeal is based on the record of the decision that was made. It's no new information is brought in, no new evidence, no new testimony. It's all about the existing record. And in this case, currently, our record is 1,900 pages. We have more than 8 hours of video. And it's not completed yet. And that's why you don't have it at this point. When I say it's not completed, I want to we have to make sure that the entire record is complete before I get it to you. I don't want to give you anything partial that just leads to questions. And if you have questions about what's in the record, if I gave it to you now, if we presented you an incomplete record at this point, your natural inclination would be to say, well, let me go look that up. Well, that's exactly what we don't want you to do. It needs to be based on the record that was before the Planning Commission. I've got my law clerk in my firm working on this to maybe save the town as much money as possible, but it's a very, very extensive job getting through 1,900 pages and putting this whole thing together. So we're working to get it out to you. At the moment, the plan is to have the packet completed next Tuesday, which means we're going to try and get it to you as soon as possible on Wednesday of next week. That only gives you 6 days for this record. You're going to have 1,900 pages of documents that were presented to the Planning Commission. If you desire 8 hours of video, we may have a transcript of all 8 hours, and we're trying to figure out if that's going to be possible at this point. You will also have the written appeal document, a written response from one of the parties, and a staff report. So it's going to be very extensive. I'll do my best to keep it as organized as possible and help you help make it so you can get through what you need to. But it's not a lot of time, and I apologize. That's just the nature of this sort of process. We went through our records at my firm, and this is the first appeal of this sort possibly ever in the town of Wellington. So it's kind of, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to determine, a lot to figure out and process. So we're working on it. And I do apologize about not being able to get it to you sooner.
With that,
Yeah.
are we thinking we're gonna like pick up flash drives? That's a lot of.
I have drop boxes. If you need a flash drive of that, I'll make sure something's available. Yes. No, I'm not going to just email out. Currently, the packet is 130 megs, something like that. But that doesn't include the video. The video is on YouTube. So, but however you need to get it, we'll make sure we're able to get that. For the packet, that will be, I suppose, published online. We'll make sure there's kind of a core packet and there's links to the rest of the record and other things, so it's available to everybody.
I had a question, since
Yeah.
the video is available on YouTube at this point, are we able to start watching that now, or do we need to wait till we have I
would highly recommend you don't, and I
Okay.
appreciate it if you're not. And the
That's fine.
reason for that, like I said, I want to make sure the whole
Okay.
record is complete before putting it. And part of that record is the appeal itself.
Okay.
And so when I provide it all, my plan is to kind of provide it in a way that it'll lay out.
Okay.
Start here and then move
Okay.
through. So I'd actually appreciate if you would. I
Okay.
think it'd help kind of for your own clarity and.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So yeah, it's a lot of work. And if I can get all that done, I am hoping to go to the library this Thursday. There's a miniature painting class, which is going to be awesome. Let out my inner nerd a little bit and, hides well below the surface, actually.
I didn't know you were internal Bob Ross.
Oh, it's miniatures. It's all about the little D&D characters.
Oh,
It's even nerdier than Bob
oh my
Ross.
gosh,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
Should be really exciting. We're going to try and plan a meeting here in town so I can go to that app.
Okay. Ms. Garcia.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, the other reports and staff communications are in your packet this evening. We'll move on to Board of Trustee reports. Trustee Teets.
Her video was not working, so she said she had no report tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
Trustee Wiegand.
No report yet. Next time.
Trustee Gator.
So did write out my report for tonight. So I brought some concerns to the mayor and asked for time to meet with him and Ms. Garcia to try and work out a solution. And Thank you. I had brought my concerns to the mayor and asked for time to meet with him and Mrs. Garcia to try and work out a solution to my concerns, and he determined at this point there's not a need for a meeting. Feeling that the issues would be resolved with a firm. I disagree that the issues have been resolved, and as such, I want to make sure that my concerns are shared with the rest of the board as well as are on the record. So I'll start with a timeline of finance-related events. So there were prior problems with finance before I even came into office, where the town of Wellington Water Enterprise was negative approximately $3.8 million from 2013 to 2019. Our finance director, after I came into office, left in December of 2021, raising multiple concerns to the Board of Trustees. Chief among these was concerns that she felt the town administration would not permit her to raise concerns about finances to the Board of Trustees. January of 2022, the Board of Trustees appointed an interim finance director and treasurer on the recommendation of Mrs. Garcia. From February of 2022 until June of 2022, the Board of Trustees received no updates or reports on the finances of the town until I expressly asked that we have some kind of update. During this time, the town also failed to begin the 2021 audit. July of 2022, the town of Wellington hired a new finance director. June 6th of 2023, our finance director resigned. June 26th of 2023, the Finance Committee meeting, town staff presented updated and corrected financial statements to the Finance Committee. They stated that many errors in the prior statements and finances were caused by prior finance director and employees that had left service at the town. Tonight, we talked about our bill from North Poudre Irrigation Company that was over budget by over $600,000. This was received in November, updated in December. Nothing was brought to us until tonight. I was informed about this at the end of May. Next week, we're looking at a recommendation at a special meeting about bringing in a firm to come in and help serve as finance director and treasurer. And the cost for that potentially could come out to close to 97% of our wages and salaries budget and 42% of our overall budget in the finance department. Moving on to what my concerns are. So the Finance Committee repeatedly asked what was changed in the report since the prior finance director left. They were repeatedly told by staff and Mrs. Garcia only GL codes were changed. That was a lie. There were multiple expenses added. I'm assuming this was from late bills being paid. Second, and by far more concerning to me, there were also changes made to every budget amount for wages and salaries for a total increase to the budget approved by the Board of Trustees by over $500,000 across all funds. This is also an increase to the budget numbers provided to the state of Colorado beyond what was approved by the Board of Trustees. There is no way this was an accidental error in entry that consistently changed every wages and salaries budget amount across the board, with most being increases. Concerns were also raised about whether we have been following our current financial policies as well as our lack of a cash handling policy. While we're currently working on a cash handling policy, we still do not have one. I do think that we need to bring in an outside firm, but I think that the scope of work we're looking at right now is not going to solve the problem. This concern was raised to Ms. Garcia by our Finance Committee meeting by the members of the committee as well as staff. Our current scope of work is, and I quote, accounts payable and receivable, budget preparation, management and adoption, financial reporting, working with audit firm, knowledge of sales and use tax revenues, impact fees and restricted funds, capital improvement plans, utility rates, overhead calculations, serve as liaison to town's Finance Committee, ability to serve as town treasurer and present reports to the Board of Trustees. This is very broad and high level. We need someone to actually come in and just focus solely on figuring out where our problems lie, and that means getting down into the details. Bad information in equals bad information out, regardless of who is looking at the data. I'm also concerned that when our administration sees numbers that say we're trending over budget, rather than taking a deeper look internally, their first assumption is that the numbers must be wrong. The whole point of having financial reports is that they help us see the things that we may not realize are issues. And looking at the changes made from the prior reports considered wrong by staff and the new corrected reports, I still see multiple areas that we're trending over for the year already, and these reports are only from March. So with that, I wanted to make sure that my concerns were brought to the entire board.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. Trustee Daly.
Very exciting news on Thursday for Main Street. They're having their first Main Street market. So this is one of my favorite activities all summer. So if you are around on Thursday from 4:30 to 7:30 in the evening, you can go down there and see one of the many vendors. There's a variety and it's so much fun. And it's our beautiful downtown park at Centennial Park. So I encourage you all to come down there. Another one is the PROS meeting. For those of you who don't know what that stands for, it's Parks, Rec, Open Space and Trails. Our meeting is likely going to be moved to the 19th. So it usually would be tomorrow, but it's going to be the week after because many of the members are not able to make it tomorrow. So I think we're still finalizing that, but that's probably the plan. But if you want to follow or let me know, I can give you an update. Upcoming, just so you know, so many youth in our community are preparing right now for fair. So if you know any 4-H kids or kids who have been working all year on projects, animals, anything like that, it's down to crunch time. And if you want to help celebrate them and other youth of Larimer County, please attend. Carnival's wonderful, and then walk through and see exhibits. We have so many 4-H clubs in Wellington, so I would say go lend your support. At CML, we just attended CML, which is Colorado Municipal League. We attended a conference and I wanted to provide a quick update of the major themes that I saw because there was a very significant theme. The first one, not so applicable to our community, but very much the forefront of most of the others is homelessness. Solutions and how that is being treated. So it was nice to see that insight and what some communities are doing that's working and not working. So that was interesting information. The other major theme I saw was affordable housing. And there's a variety again of techniques that other communities are attempting to do to improve that. A lot of them, the theme was going to smaller lots and homes to make them more affordable and to do cottage type areas, and then also accessory dwellings. So these are all the kind of the things in the forefront of my mind that I definitely want to consider in the future when we're talking about housing options and how to make it easier for people to live easier. So, and they also mentioned that it is not a subsidy related conversation necessarily. Obviously there is part of that, but this is, average homes are not able, or average people who are not in poverty are still having a very hard time affording housing. So this impacts the middle class as well, and is a significant, and maybe the biggest concern in Colorado for the Colorado Municipal League. The other item that I heard frequently, and it's interesting timing, but this was a topic in I think 4 different sessions that I did, including one between for Grand Junction, talking about relationship between boards and town administrators. And between that and many other presentations, they did mention that the town board, when they choose to use their authority to police staff, it is detrimental to the health of that community and to health of that organization. It causes extreme turnover, which is exactly opposite of our strategic plan. Organizational strength is one of our strategic plan initiatives. And above and beyond that, let's say the staff is staying and still participating as public servants who love our community. When you work in fear and intimidation, you do not have empowerment, you are not creative, you are scared and walking on eggshells. And this is something that was acknowledged by multiple communities as they are talking about both the strength of that organization, retaining staff, of course, and just being able to excel. So when we consider maybe difficult challenges that we've had in our town, my method and ask, of course, of us to follow those best practices is to provide grace and understanding, and to understand that some of those items are outside of our scope. So I just want to make sure that we have that consideration. But above and beyond, Thursdays, Main Street, Centennial Park is our farmers market, Main Street Market, and is a wonderful, wonderful event to come to. And I love our Main Street program. So
Out of
please.
curiosity, how many vendors do they average?
I do know that they opened it up for more vendors because they still had so many late applicants. So they're adding 5. So they maxed out and now they're adding more. So it's going to be good. It's going to be lovely. So please support Main Street.
Thank you, trustee.
Mhm.
Trustee Mason. Having no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.